right, we are live. How are you guys doing, YouTube? How you doing, brothers and sisters? So today I got a special treat. I got Bryan, Demon Racers in the studio, but we also have a special guest, Voice of Reason's official. Is that your official TikTok name now, or
It's official. I'm just VOR now. They just renamed me, so
We're gonna call him VOR, and I might call him Luke because that's his name. I don't know if I should if I just doxed him.
Oh, he just doxed me. Nobody knows that name. Yeah.
But yeah, so we're going to talk about a very timely issue. Dinosaurs, are they fact or are they fiction or are they science fiction? Is it a bit of both? And of course, Bryan and Luke, I would say, are probably more on the end of they believe a little bit more of the science, and I'm kind of the more skeptical thing. But we are all believers in Christ. We're all Bible believers, so we probably have slightly different takes on it. But anyways, welcome back to the show. The last time I had you here we're talking about science, Luke.
Yeah.
Also, I think we all have like 3 different views on this topic, probably.
It's great.
It's going to be interesting.
Well, it's important, I think, when JT and I talked about it, because believers out there have different views, and so to come here united in love and to try to represent our side, iron sharpens iron. I think it's just it adds value to people on the spectrum of what they believe about it. So it's good that's not redundant.
Maybe should we get out the gate and just let people that are watching know like what we each kind of have a perspective just shortly, so that way people know, or do we do like?
Well, yeah. Well, I'll go ahead. So Luke is he's more science focused on his TikTok and his videos, and obviously his YouTube as well. Luke, you've done a lot of videos about dinosaurs. Like, why do you do videos about dinosaurs?
I think it's one of the tremendous pieces of evidence in favor of the accuracy of the biblical history and the biblical scientific narrative. That's the point of VOR, is to defend the creator and the information war. That's our mission here. So the Bible is the historical account of the creator of the universe. And so, this 100 million, 150, 200 million years ago, dinosaurs evolved into chickens thing isn't biblical. And the evidence actually points to the biblical narrative. Recent dinosaurs being here recently and being fossilized in the flood, and humans existing with them, et cetera. So to me, it's intended by the scientific community to try to rewrite God's history to debunk the Bible, but all the evidence points to the validity of the Bible. So I think they're real, and I think that it exactly lines up with what we would expect to see if Scripture was accurate.
Can I share my theory along with that, or you go first, JT?
No, Bryan. What do you think about dinosaurs?
Okay, so I've done a lot of studying this, and actually I worked with a guy named Jack Horner. He's actually the paleontologist that Jurassic Park was modeled after. He's actually really well known, and I studied this a lot before I was fully immersed in the Christian perspective of what I do now, which is casting out demons. Okay. And, I was very much involved in that kind of stuff. And then I ended up messaging it to him, reaching out to him about the process of evolution, because I don't believe in evolution. I believe that it is a lie. And I believe there's so much to that that's very convoluted. And I asked him a very puzzling question that he was trying to answer. I ended up connecting with Jack Horner and was able to build some stuff for his website and some of the content. I helped create some of the stuff for him. But as he was growing with this idea, which was Dinogenesis, which I named, by the way, that his project was Dinogenesis. I'm the one that named it. And so anyways, I got to ask a lot of cool questions about genetics and engineering and paleontology stuff. And I have a friend that was a paleontologist, grew up, that dug up some dinosaur bone stuff. And so I believe that they are real. I believe that there is, I don't believe that they are fantasy or fake. I believe that they are real creatures, but I think the understanding that we have of them very different than what we think. Just like animals today, like people think that dinosaurs are going to eat you alive if you saw them, like Jurassic Park. I think that's a big lie. I think they were probably a lot nicer. In fact, if you look at a skeleton of a killer whale, for example, you would say that thing would tear a person to pieces, but killer whales for some reason know not to eat people. Okay, there's an intelligence to animals, and I've worked with a lot of animals, and I've been around a lion, dude. I've been in a cage with a tiger. I've been pet and right next to a lion. So I've been around a lot of animals, and I know how animals act. And this is the perspective that we have that dinosaurs are something akin to alligators is silly, because alligators would just chomp you. But I think they were more I think they were more akin to something like a lion or something like a bear in that regard. And I don't know what these animals,
which are
I don't
man
think we can,
eaters.
which are man eaters to some degree, but you can actually walk up to them, and if you approach them with kindness, they won't. They'll actually run away from you. They're more afraid of you. And so there's a stigma that we've catered to this idea to think that dinosaurs are a certain way. I don't think they're that way. I think they're real. I think they were animals, and I think maybe they might even be creations of Nephilim that created these things potentially, possibly. I'm not 100% on that one. I'd love to hear your voice of reason thoughts, Luke, if you have any on that. But I think that might be that's the debate where I fall, is like, were they creations of God or were they creations of perversion and Nephilim hybrid genetics? And so, but I do believe they were that. And I think there are some historical aspects to giants that were also misplaced with dinosaurs, and some of it might be a little bit of a cover up, which I think, JT, you hold more to that value. And that's
yeah, so I'll give my 2 cents. I think the whole concept of dinosaurs is made up. I mean, I'm not denying that there is old bones and then there's old things in the ground, different types of animals, but like what dinosaurs to me is a narrative. It's a story put behind some bones that were found, which I don't think there's a lot of science behind. I think it's a lot of loose on the science and then big on the narrative behind the thing. So even let's just go right to the name. So a dinosaur comes from a Greek that's terrible lizard or monstrous lizard. Okay, so now they're telling us they're not even lizards. So how much do they actually know about these things that they're so sure about, lived hundreds of millions of years ago, that obviously predate man, predate the Bible? And so to me, that's the real thing where like people like Christians have to try to, I feel like sometimes defend the Bible against a story that's really not, we don't have to defend against this story because they don't have a lot of facts. Again, like I said, if you go from calling them terrible lizards and now you're saying, chickens are dinosaurs, birds are dinosaurs. Okay, so a dinosaur is a lizard. Now you're saying that they're birds. So what I'm really trying to say is that, like, I feel like that dinosaurs are used often in the same kind of way that evolution would be to debunk the Bible. The Big Bang would be to debunk the Bible. And I do believe that I don't believe all the bones are fake that are found in the ground, but I know for sure that the bones in the museums are fake. And so like, to me, I guess that's the way I kind of look at it, of like, that this is another brick in the wall that says your Bible's not true. And I know that, Luke, obviously you have something to say about that.
Right. I think that really shows kind of the spectrum of where we're at. And I think this is so important for Christians to be able to disseminate truth from non-truth, because, the Bible, the devil is the father of lies, and he works overtime and like psychological operations to force us into believing one thing or the other thing. And a lot of times the truth is more nuanced and in the middle. So it sounds like I align with Bryan here a lot. As 100%, the goal is to disprove the Bible or to put into the minds of the children. Dinosaur works really well because children love dinosaurs, to start imprinting into the children's mind deep time and evolution. There's that show on PBS, Dinosaur Train. It's like, oh, we're kids and dinosaurs are old and definitely evolution and definitely millions of years. So it's definitely a narrative. So I agree with you on that, JT. And it's designed to, when you're 6 years old, 8 years old, 10 years old, and they tell you the universe came from nothing and we're all just animals, the kid goes, no, because everything can't come from nothing. Nothing can come from nothing. It's just what it is. And then you see all of the animals and you go, I'm not like the other animals. You mentioned earlier, I don't know if it was the pre-conversation or just now, Bryan, but God, it was just now. God gave us dominion over the animals, and we are clearly different than them. And to be on TikTok, debating the atheists, which is what I do most of the time, these children, especially Gen Z, they are convinced we're animals. I try to tell them that they're not animals in meaningless universe, and they want me to fly a kite. They want me out of the room. They know they're animals. So this narrative is antithetical to the Bible. They started with, God spoke this reality into existence. No, it was an explosion. Instead of this beautiful intended speaking, it was an explosion. The Bible says the earth started with water and it was still and peaceful. No, it was fire and explosions. The Bible says we're made in the image of God. No, we're just mutated chimpanzees. I mean, they're the most vile, great apes are the most vile, disgusting creatures. The devil is laughing in hell that we believe that we are like them, that we're made in their image and not the image of the living God. So very intense psychological operation we're under, and dinosaurs are a huge part of that, starting with the children.
Well, let me ask you a question. I'll set it up for you, Luke. Okay, so let's talk about what we do know, and we'll talk about fossils. Okay, explain to us the fossilization process, and explain to us why this actually would, whatever they did find, whatever these bones happen to be that are fossilized, whether you're classifying them as whatever, explain to us why this actually fits more into a biblical narrative than it does into the many years.
Also, one thing, can I I've been on digs, by the way. I've dug up dinosaur stuff. I've actually been on digs, and I have an interesting perspective on that. So when you're done, let me throw something in there.
Okay, I'll try to do this quickly. Rather than me tell you, I'm going to show the American Natural History Museum, and they will tell you, because obviously we know that the temple of science, the American Natural History Museum, is the official trusted narrative. So I'm going to share my screen here, and then we're going to talk about which narrative this makes more sense in: the young Earth creation or the biblical history version.
I love this video.
Or the scientific narrative. Okay. This is, I don't know if you've seen it, Bryan. You're going to get a kick out of this, though. Hopefully, if the levels aren't good, let me know.
I haven't seen it, I don't think.
Okay.
Millions of years ago, this dinosaur was going about his normal daily life.
Classy.
But his day went from good to bad. Really bad. After he died, other dinosaurs ate him, and the rest of his skin and muscles rotted away, leaving just his bones. These were quickly buried by mud.
Very, very important.
Buried.
This is the video, How Do Fossils Form? So they die of natural causes, food poisoning. I guess you call it natural.
And they don't get ripped apart while they're being eaten.
Right. They very carefully eat, as I would eat like a. But even when I eat chicken wings, I pull the wings apart to get the rest of the meat.
No, you don't. You keep the bones of the chicken all together while you eat it, don't you?
Try to poke them out. So just in case
you line them back up.
And quickly mud encases them, they will one day be rocks.
As opposed to the truth, which is that God built scavengers to totally tear apart and re-assimilate organic tissue back into the soil so it can be, obviously used as fertilizer. Nope. They carefully pick around the bones, and then delicately. So that's part of it, right? Okay, they're covered in mud. They die of natural causes and they cover in mud. Just to elucidate that. Okay, go ahead.
Oh, I was going to say, just to be clear, like for anybody watching, like the idea of fossils, for those that know, if your dog died in your backyard, he would not become a fossil. Like it doesn't work like that, because it has to involve mud covering rapidly. It has to be, and it has to still have the body intact. So your the skeletons that we find of dinosaurs is actually indicative of a fact that there was some type of natural catastrophe that happened, let alone there's actually a name for it, where the dinosaurs die, where they're all arched backwards. Do you know this?
Yeah, the dinosaur death pose. I have that.
The dinosaur death pose, yes. And so anyways, keep going.
Yeah, go ahead.
So the video is How Do Dinosaur Fossils Form? Maybe I should have explained that. So thanks, Bryan, for clarifying. If your dog dies in the backyard, or a squirrel gets ran over, or a raccoon gets ran over, it's never going to become a fossil, because it's going to be scavenged. All the tissues are going to be, they're going to obviously decompose. And then there's bone-eating worms. There's funguses. It'll entirely obliterate this thing into nothing. It won't become a fossil. So you need it to die and then be buried in mud. So the reason I'm showing this video is what's more logical: dying dinosaurs and then clean picking apart by the other scavengers, and then mud. They just showed mud, matter of fact, and then mud. Watch it. Just if they
can I tell you what? Make one real quick point. Can you tell? You can tell this video is made for children, though. Like
Yes.
like how unserious it is. They're showing a dinosaur playing tennis, and then on the toilet. This is made for little boys, because little boys might believe this.
Yes,
it's to laugh at.
This is to indoctrinate the children. This is to change the mind of the child. They watch this. Even Walt Disney knew about this. If you can take this information and animate it, kids are going to love it. And so, this is the ultimate. I'm glad you made that point. Watch this next scene, just to clarify.
But dinosaurs live on land. So how do they get buried so quickly?
Good question, right? Bryan just asked that. Please tell me, Natural History Museum.
Most dinosaur fossils we find belong to animals that were living near to a lake or a river. they died, and a short while later the area flooded, covering the remains in mud and silt.
Yep. That's the official narrative. Dinosaur, because we find them all over the world. Clearly what's happening here is they're dying near the river every time, and then the river overtops, and this is how we get the dinosaur fossils.
Wow.
The fossils are found literally all over the earth, on mountains, in deserts, in all four corners of the earth. So they want you to believe that the way that dinosaur fossils are formed is that they die of natural causes or whatever, and then mud happens on them because the river overtops or whatever. What they're doing here is they're hiding the fact that this, or the more likely scenario, that there was a massive mud event that happened likely all over the world that encased all of these dinosaurs in real time while they were living, verified by, hopefully my next, I'm going to have to reshare my screen, by the dinosaur death pose that Bryan just brought up. Yeah, you guys can talk for a second while I figure out how to share this next screen.
You know what's interesting as you say this, and as Bryan might be more on this page with me. What about the mud flood? I mean, obviously, I don't know how much you've looked into that, Luke, but there's all these crazy things from like the 1800 buildings that look like they're buried within like the first 6 feet of the building at least. Well, is it possible that some of these fossils actually are not as old as, well, I mean, obviously, I know we don't believe that they're millions of years. Could they, how long would it take if something was encased in mud and with enough pressure to become like stone?
The interesting part is, like, the mud flood is clear signs that is unrelated to the dinosaurs' burial, I think, in a lot of cases.
Well, something buried everything. I mean, that's the thing. There's something buried everything.
But the mud flood, the stuff that's buried, it's still intact. Whereas the dinosaurs, when they're buried, they're fossilized into stone, and they're not. It was like, I think there was multiple flood events that happened. I think it's possible there was 2 type of major flooding events that happened on the Earth.
One was a flood of water, and one was of mud.
What was of mud? Yeah, mud was of destruction. And then and the flood of water would make mud as well. So the dinosaur death pose that he's talking about is the opisthotic death pose, I believe is how you pronounce it. I'm not very good at it. Opisthotic death pose is that right there. And that's a sign of an animal drowning, guys. That is when an animal drowns, the arched head goes back because they're gasping for air, and they're like, and you die in that pose. That is a sign that an animal has drowned. Okay. If you see a drowned squirrel in a dead body, it will have its head. It will be arched back like that. Okay. That is the sign that something has been drowned, which means not just mud. It means water. It means a flood happened. And that's why they look like that. That's why when you see all the dinosaurs dead like that and still intact, it means they drowned to death.
Luke, let me explain. I want you to explain how the science explains how being near a lake, somehow they end up under the lake.
Yeah, because animals have no survival instinct. Yep, they just go, oh sweet, I'm dead now. Oops.
Somehow they not only did the lake flood, but somehow they managed to go to the very bottom and under the mud, under the bottom,
and then get into a drowning pose while they were already dead.
And then drown.
I can't even try to defend, like, steel man their argument. It makes absolutely no sense, because animals. I love that you said that. Animals flee danger. They have a sense about it. There'll be a natural disaster coming, and they'll be gone. People will be like, "Oh no, the birds are flying. Something's happening." They would not just sit there and be overtaken by a slowly overtopping river. Let me read this really quickly, then I can stop sharing my screen because I'm taking over the whole thing. So this is quick. This is a Canadian National Geographic. Bryan's totally right. This is a result of dying of drowning or asphyxiation. It can be that they're trying to get a last gasp of air. It can also be that the brain doesn't get oxygen, and at the last second of it still having energy going through its body, it convulses through, because of asphyxiation. It's a convulsion thing that happens, and all the muscles tense up. So this talks about it. I'll be quick with it. Well, no one knows for certain how dinosaur bones ended up in this position. The answer may lie with that liquid resource coming out of your tap. Many believe that large flooding swept up the dinosaurs, causing their deaths. In the throes of drowning, they end up in this unique position, typically associated with brain damage and asphyxiation. This is not a creation website. This is the Canadian National Geographic, or something like that, one of their natural history museums. Okay, to support the theory, scientists in Utah submerged chickens in fresh water and found that they arched their necks back and arched their necks and threw back their heads within seconds of going in the water. Other scientists submerged birds in salt water and saw no movement of the head or neck. So fresh water, that's important. because then we think the flood was fresh. Some speculate water was a contributor to the pose, but only after death. Once immersion in the water, Some even believe the fossilized bones are evidence supporting the flood in Genesis. While water may be the reason for the pose, it says that in there. It's the most likely scenario. Let's see, with abundant rivers and lakes, doubts still rise for bones found in arid landscapes. Why does this happen in deserts, right? It makes sense it kind of makes sense next to a river. It doesn't make sense next in a desert. So anyways, the theory still works for dinosaurs traipsing through volcanic. They're trying to figure this thing out, but then the standard, what the Occam's razor definition here is massive mud tsunamis overtook these things. And there's I don't know about the whole Tartaria thing and the mud floods, but if you study the catastrophic plate tectonic model, you have, as the fountains of the great deep burst forth, you have massive tsunamis that start in taking over the coasts, right? You have like huge waves. You think about what happened in Japan a few years ago. And what in this case, you would have the dinosaurs running away from that. They would run inland from the shores to try to get away from it until they got to the middle of the continent where they couldn't run anymore and they were overtaken. And guess where that is? I'm from Colorado.
Everywhere. Top of mountains.
Well, top of mountains, yes. But if you look at the Dinosaur Ridge running south to north, right inside of just basically at the Rocky Mountains, you could make the argument that they ran inland as far as they could to get away from this. They couldn't run any further. And this is where the fossilization happened, where the last bit of land was overtaken and they were submerged in mud.
And also we have a thing called dinosaur deathbeds. And I don't know if you know this, but it's when we're digging up dinosaurs, we will find them all in one area because the dinosaur deathbed, because water pushed them to one conclusive area before they all drowned and died. And so they all die in one spot. So when you find one dinosaur, you're likely to find multiple dinosaurs in that same area. And that's what we know in digging, because I've been on digs. Like, that's how you find it. You go, oh, well, there's one here. Yeah, they will all hang out in one area because they were running from a flood, guys. It's very obvious that they're running from a flood.
But okay, so let me ask you guys a question though. So what leads science to conclude that all these fossils are the same kind of species of things? Because I think that's where I really get into the skepticism of that. Again, this is a big story about these creatures. Again, big animals are not unusual today. There's many big animals. So the fact that they decide to classify this one group, which again, as I mentioned earlier, they classified them wrong because now they're saying they're not lizards. They're literally saying they're a whole different species. Is it possible that the groups of extinct species that have nothing to do with being bird-like or lizard-like could get lumped into these things, especially when you know that they didn't really find as many intact skeletons as they would lead you to believe?
Yeah, I would say, yeah, they absolutely could be. But like there's a thing called megafauna right now in the world. And this is very important to understand. So megafauna, the only megafauna that's alive in North America is the moose. I don't know if you guys have ever seen a moose in person, but it is massive. These things,
they're big.
They're not like deer, okay? They're not like reindeer. They're not like cows. They are massive creatures. Moose are ginormous, okay? And they're the only megafauna alive in the North American place. But in the rest of the world, we do have other megafauna alive. For instance, like a bear is not considered a megafauna. I don't know if you know that, but bears aren't. I think grizzly bear borderlines the scale of a megafauna. But like when it comes to other countries, like in Africa, all the megafauna live in Africa. There's elephants are megafauna. Okay, giraffes are megafauna. Rhinos are megafauna. Megafauna are creatures that are beyond the normal scale size. A lot of dinosaurs are simply megafauna. Okay, and so we don't necessarily know how they were looked at. We don't know if they had scales. We don't know if they had feathers. We don't know if they had hair or fur. Like, we don't actually have a good contextual imprint in mud of what they looked like. Okay, we don't have a good contextual imprint. So we're assuming by their bone structure that they were this type of animal, that this type of creature, because of it. Like velociraptor means bird of prey.
As we continue on that point, let me share a screen with you guys, and let's look at what, if we didn't really know what these animals look like. You guys have kind of a picture in your head, like what would we think some of these animals? Let me see.
Oh yeah, this is great.
So these are just some of them. So this is from the UK Daily Mail. And okay, so look, what you see guys, what I'm looking at right here?
Yeah.
That's a swan.
That's a swan. Oh, great.
That's a swan. Okay, so you take a look at that, and again, based on their definition that birds are dinosaurs. Well, I guess
did George Lucas draw that?
He was involved in some digging
Jar
up
Jar
dinosaurs.
Jar Jar Binks, definitely a dinosaur. Okay, so this right here is a baboon.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay, so again, that's what a baboon would look like if you decided he was a lizard or some kind of a bird thing.
Or you just gave these are artists that were just given skeletons, I'm guessing.
Now this one I gotta show a better picture of this. Like that right there is a hippopotamus.
Wow.
Dude, I love the hippopotamus skull because if you
I gotta find the hippo meme.
Are these are, mind you, these are skeletons, I think, right? That were given to these people and said, draw a creature based on just looking at the skeleton, and these are the conclusions they've come up with. Yeah, and when you look at a hippopotamus skull, you're like, what the heck is that? Like, how do we know these creatures aren't full of like fat? And bring it up, just bring it up.
Yeah,
how do we know
these creatures aren't full of... I'm gonna bring up the hippo one right here.
Oh, this is great.
You guys look at that. Look at a hippo skull. I mean, like that is as terrifying as almost any dinosaur looking skull you've seen. But again, like you could start applying these same kind of like, you decide what you believe is a dinosaur versus whatever. This is a skeleton. I mean, like that's why I was saying, like, can you imagine if you found like an alligator skeleton, you found like a skeleton of an elephant, a rhinoceros, a bear, and for some reason, because they're old and supposedly they're millions of years old, you can easily just lump them into one thing and then say, again, spin a story around it, which again is very loose on the facts.
That it's interesting that you mentioned elephant skeleton because there is theories that cyclopses were actually elephant skeletons, guys. And so cyclopses didn't really exist. Giants didn't exist, guys. In fact, they mistaken elephants for these cyclops skulls.
Look, there you go. So look, here we have an elephant on the left. We have a zebra, and then we have a rhino.
Wow.
You know what I'm saying? Like, so now, and there's Jennifer Aniston, who may or may not be a man.
She's not a fossil. She's not a fossil.
No, she's not a fossil. But I'm saying like that. Could anyone really conclude that any of the illustrations, especially that's why I said when you start watching stuff on National Geographic now, and they start going into 3D animation or cartoons, immediately my eyes roll back in my head, and I'm just like, intellectually, I cannot stand that.
Well, one of the things, go ahead.
I was gonna say I'm an artist and I drew the Chickenosaurus, one of the things for Jack Horner. So like as an artist, I'm just an artist, bro. Like, and I drew the Chickenosaurus image that they were kind of contemplating utilizing or whatever. So like it's given to artists, and us artists are the ones that depict what that creature is gonna look like. And so we're really good artists, but like, dude, it's still my guess. Like I drew the Chickenosaurus thing.
I can't believe you drew that. Like I'm a little bit starstruck right now. That's crazy.
Well, here, I'll show you.
He's basically a scientist. He's basically a paleontologist now. Look, that's what I'm saying. Like, is there any easier job than a guy who's a paleontologist, other than probably have to dig up stuff? Maybe
what's
like a little
funny,
like with a little brush,
is to read the scientific journal from a guy like Henry Fairfield Osborn when he discovered Nebraska Man, and the version of science they did, the bona fide science at like the turn of the century. It's so terrible. It's like, I investigated the tooth with a monocle, and I know because science. It's like it's just all like magic. It's you guys should look that up. It's really funny.
Actually, Luke, please play that video you played of Jack Horner. Explain it, because that's kind of like what we're saying, like that. Okay, so who gets to decide that these are all one species,
right,
of thing?
Well, so Bryan dropped a bomb on my head. Thank you for not warning me that he knows Jack Horner. And if you're familiar with my work, I've extensively covered Jack Horner, his relationship with Mary Schweitzer, the soft tissue in the dinosaur bones, his discussion with Bob Enyart, saying that, he was on a recorded line. He didn't know it. No, we're not going to carbon date this because the young Earth creationists would have a field day with it. I'm no fan of the guy. I have so many. I don't want to go too far into that, but Bryan knows this guy, and I just so that one of the most I'm geeking out over the fact that he knows it. But yeah, this video is Jack Horner just exposing his authority over. You can't question us because we're the scientist, and it's remarkable. So before I share this, do you want to show your thing, Bryan? Well, that shouldn't say it that way. Do you want to show your drawing?
No. It's okay. It's all right. Go for it.
Okay.
Go for it.
Okay. So this is the video where just a little bit of context really quick. This is a TED Talk with Jack Horner. And this is where he says that they have found soft tissues in dinosaur bones. Because I get a lot on my live debates that I do. They go, no, Mary Schweitzer hates young Earth creation. It's been debunked. There's no soft tissues. Just official narrative. They just regurgitate the official narrative. So this is Jack Horner actually saying that we did find soft tissues. So I'm going to play this. It's about a minute. And then I'm going to go forward to what I showed you before, him saying why you can't question him. It's just, I think, disturbing. It's disturbing. Lying to children.
Did you see Mary Schweitzer's on 60 Minutes when they asked her what was your first thought?
Yeah, I'm afraid to tell Jack.
She said, "I'm afraid. I'm afraid." She said she was scared because she saw it. Anyways, continue.
Well, first off, they said, she said, well, look, Mary Schweitzer, you've just made the most remarkable discovery in the history of paleontology. How do you feel? Are you going to get an award? Are you going to go to Disneyland? No, I'm scared out of my mind. Why? Because you'll be ridiculed? Yeah. And then it says, the announcer, Leslie Stahl, I think, says, she finally mustered the courage to tell Jack. That's the world of science that we live in, where you make the most remarkable discovery that changes everything, and you're afraid to tell Jack Horner that you've, like, no, you should be running on the top of the mountains, and Jack should say, this is the most amazing thing we've ever found. Hey, maybe we're wrong. They always say that in science. We could be wrong. Science changes. No, it's a religion. And no, they don't question their sacred cow of evolution. Okay, I'd go on a 10-hour rant.
Keep going.
But yes, I'm very familiar with that, Bryan. Okay, watch this.
But Mary went further. She took the bone and she dumped it into acid. Now, we all know that bones are fossilized. And so if you dump it into acid, there shouldn't be anything left. But there was something left. There were blood vessels left. There were flexible, clear blood vessels. And so here was the first soft tissues from a dinosaur. It was extraordinary.
From the mouth of Jack Horner, the world expert, paleontologic expert in dinosaurs, the guy that the Sam Neill character in Jurassic Park was modeled after, saying, so if anybody says to you, if you say, oh, there were soft tissues in dinosaurs, and the atheist says, no, there wasn't, Jack Horner, the literal authority, says it's soft tissues. Okay, a little bit later in the video, he says...
Wait, so let me ask you a question, Luke, because I don't know the answer to this. How long would soft tissue be expected to last in bones?
They expected it to last thousands of years. Go ahead, Bryan.
Max is 25,000 years is max, like, because it's the end of the carbon dating life expectancy, because at that point all the carbon's left, there is no more soft tissue.
Is it possible that they're even younger than that? That's what I'm kind of
of course. Way younger than that.
Well, I mean, obviously not 25,000 years, but I mean, like,
5,300.
Is it possible that that they're hundreds of years old, not thousands?
Well, no, not the fossils.
Yes, it's possible.
Well, I mean, like I said, but I guess that's what I was trying to get into before is, like, does anyone really have an idea with compression of mud and all those things, how long would it take to create a fossil?
JT, let's do that. But go ahead.
Yeah, go ahead.
Let me show this video
because
I feel stupid bogarting the screen with this, and you asked for this, and this is very important. And then we should talk about how fossils are formed and what the max end is. We got some really cool information on that, and I'm sure Bryan agrees or has even his own information, which is going to be great to hear. But okay, this is Jack Horner talking about why you can't question that dinosaurs definitely turned into birds. One of the most ridiculous concepts you could ever imagine, especially when you were taught, I'm Gen X, they're lizards. They're big, bad lizards. Like, well, no, they're birds.
Monstrous lizards.
I believe they were lizards because you told me. And now you're telling me they're birds. Fine. Did you make up your story? This is a you problem, not a me problem. But anyways, watch how he handles this. It's so disturbing, and I need a minute to talk about it, and then let's go back into the fossil thing.
Birds are dinosaurs. Birds are living dinosaurs. We actually classify them as dinosaurs. We now call them non-avian dinosaurs and avian dinosaurs. So the non-avian dinosaurs are the big clunky ones that went extinct. Avian dinosaurs are our modern birds. So we don't have to make a dinosaur. So I already have them. I know you're bad as the sixth graders, right? The sixth graders look at it and they say, no. You can call it a dinosaur.
Out of the mouth
but
of
look
babes.
at the velociraptor. The velociraptor is cool. The chicken is not. So this is our problem, as you can imagine. The chicken is a dinosaur. I mean, it really is. I mean, you can't argue with it because we're the classifiers and we classified it that way.
People are cheering for that. This is one of the most disturbing examples of intellectual bullying, gaslighting, controlling the information you could ever see. That's even allowed to be on air and that people consent to it. Look at what he does. He says the thing that everybody knows is ridiculous. It stops the whole room. Then he looks at everybody. This is what professors will always do. Like, I don't want to speak generally, but this is how the theory of evolution and the Big Bang and all these things are promoted. You question me? Are you laughing at me? You can't laugh at me. I'm the authority. You're as bad as a child. Now, people are so tribal-minded, and we want to fit in with the tribe. This is what peer pressure is about. 9 out of 10 people will go, I want to respect authority. I don't want to be laughed at. I don't want to be the one that he's scorning. So yeah, I agree with you, Jack, that he's gaslighted you into accepting his thing. And then what does he say? You're as bad as a 6th grader. Out of the mouth of babes. It's a bad thing when you're 10, 12 years old and somebody sells you a bill of goods that's not accurate at all, not even believable, and you question it. That's a bad thing. Yes, it is, Jack Horner, because you haven't destroyed their will yet. You haven't indoctrinated them out of the ability to think critically. They still have intuition. They still are deducing how this reality works. Oh, I dropped something on my foot. It hurts. My car, my little RC car runs out of batteries. I'm not an animal. The universe didn't come from nothing. This kids still have intuition. It hasn't been indoctrinated out of them. And by the time university's over, it's gone. You can forget about it. And people will never question Jack Horner. Then he says, this is our problem. This is our problem as science, is people intuitively don't believe the thing that we're saying. So I'm going to bully you and gaslight you till you believe it. Oh, and by the way, we make the rules. We're the classifiers. So you can't question us. So that's just how it is. You can't question them. Did I lose you? Looks like my internet's bad.
No, it's going.
Okay, so this is last thing. This is the rule. This is how they do it. Control the information. They're the ones that do the classification. Anybody that questions them is gaslit, bullied, made to look stupid. So everybody agrees to this thing. And this is how dinosaurs becoming, Jurassic Park and 100 million years old happened. This is how us being chimpanzees happened. This is how the Big Bang happened. It's not about science. It's about interpreting the data in favor of a worldview, and that worldview is anything but the Bible.
Yeah, and that's
true.
Well,
I mean, that's the point. I mean, I guess that's the point that I fall on, where I'm like, that when I hear someone talk to me like that, I'm like, why would I believe anything you say now? Because again, it's like, that's the funny part. It's like that. Why won't you just be convinced by me saying this?
Right.
When it's like, why would I be? Like, because then you would show all the degrees and all the doctorates and all the things and all like the appeal to authority. When that's not science. Again, science is skepticism, because it's like, yeah, you're supposed to prove it to me and I'm supposed to disprove it. And I'm like, and when people laugh at you immediately, well, you probably need to come back with more proof than you had, right? Wouldn't that be like what science was supposed to do? Is like, well, gosh, everyone laughed at me when I told everyone my theory, so maybe I should actually go do some more homework to prove them and to prove the skeptics wrong.
Well, it's interesting that you use. Yeah, exactly. Right. It's interesting that you use Jack Horner as the example, because I want to show you. I want to mention something further about Research Smithsonian. I love that.
I love your shirt.
I want to mention something about Jack Horner specifically, because I know there's another video that you want to bring up about his interview where he was asked to carbon date stuff. So I've talked to him and asked some stuff, and I got some insight on things that I got a perspective of that isn't shared with the mainstream take on views of things. And Jack Horner is fairly respectable. In fact, I've told him I don't believe in evolution, and I straight up told him that, and he's like, well, that's fine. He's like, we can all have our own opinions of things, and he still worked with me. Like I came at him questioning narrative, so he was like still open to receive and have me even work with his stuff, even though I'm like, yeah, I don't really believe in evolution. I think one of my things was like, if you're gonna make a chicken into a dinosaur, by the way, this is before I was a Christian. I had like some still questionable. I still believe the narrative of the Bible, but I wasn't like fully a Christian. But I was like, hey, if you make a Chickenosaurus, I want one. I was like, I will do all this stuff and work with you, but I want one of the first Chickenosaurus that ever get created. And so like, that was kind of my motivation.
How would go ahead, finish what you're saying, Bryan.
Oh yeah, well, I was going to say, so like what I'm going to tell you is that he's fairly respectable, but he was questioned in the beginning because he actually originally balked the narrative. He broke and discredited like hundreds of scientists. Jack Horner's work, what the video you were just watching, which was How Young Are the Dinosaurs, right? Was that the one you were watching? How Young Baby Dinosaurs? Where did all the baby dinosaurs go?
No, that's
the one where it says where
different. It's a TED
that's
Talk.
the other video.
But it's the one
There's
about
2 TED Talks.
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, there's one that says, where did all the baby dinosaurs go? And this was actually originally Jack Horner. Doesn't have a degree, mind you. He doesn't have a degree. He's like, he was an honorary degree because of what he did. And he's an example of a man that was bought and paid for. And I'm going to tell you right now what happened. And so Jack Horner literally, so he cut open baby dinosaur bones. And then he cut open big dinosaur bones. And he saw that the little ones had spongy tissue, which meant they were young. And then he cut open the bigger ones and saw that they were solid tissue bones, right? And so when he did that, we had a classification of like hundreds of different dinosaurs. There was Nano T-Rex, Nano Tyrannus, and then we have the Tyrannosaurus Rex. Well, they said, well, the Nano Tyrannus looks a little bit different than the T-Rex, so this is a different species of creature, and it's reached its adult age, we assumed. No, it was a baby. And he proved that there was baby dinosaurs metamorphosized as they got bigger. They actually changed shape as they got bigger. In fact, the Triceratops' horns start off going up, and as it gets older, it gets arched. They start to arch backwards, and the frill gets 2 holes in the middle. And so we had like 4 classifications of the same Tyrannosaurus that had 4 different names by 4 different scientists that named things that were like, we love to name stuff. And like, he destroyed all the titles from all the other scientists. So he stole titles from a bunch of scientists when he made his original discovery, and science hated him for it. They hated him. They were like, you're saying that there's not as many Tyrannosaurus, right? There's not as many dinosaurs in North America. Yeah, there's only like 27. He proved there was 27 versus like 84 or something ridiculous.
Well, the thing is, that's again, so, but you say prove those. Like, I mean, have these people proved really anything?
I'm gonna tell you how he proved it. So he did prove it, and
there might be evidence, but has he proved anything?
Well, in the skeletal remains, you can cut open small dinosaurs and you can see spongy bone, and you can cut open little bigger ones. They're a little more dense, and really big ones have solid bones. So we know that and the density of bone depends on your age. So like if you cut open a human's bones, we can tell how old you are based on the density of your bone. And so we know that the bone density, it gets more solid as you get older. So he looked at the dinosaurs like that and destroyed and ruined a bunch. And then guess what? The scientific community denied him so bad. They were like, you're a liar, you're a fake, you're a fraud. They excommunicated him from a bunch of stuff. So he started his own museum, which is in Montana. And he literally started his own museum just saying, like, this is what I'm going to tell everybody, whether you're going to tell me this way or not. And so he actually went against the scientific narrative. And finally, the scientific narrative adapted his story and said, you know what, Jack, you're right. We're going to give you an honorary degree. Wow. And they gave him a degree and indoctrinated him into the narrative because they realized they couldn't disprove this dude's findings wrong. Wow. And so like his findings became so substantial that he became the theory of why Jurassic Park was modeled after him. And he was the first to hypothesize dinosaurs cared for their young, because before Jack Horner, they were like, dinosaurs are vicious monsters that will eat you. And then he was like, no, like they care for the young. Oh, and they have feathers, and they have this, and they have eggs, and they grow in colonies. So he brought all this evidence to the surface that science was excommunicating. And then they brought him into the club, the Cool Kids Club, and now he is afraid to say things like, oh, guess what? They carbon date to around 10,000 years old. He won't say it. He knows what they carbon date to. I know he knows because we talked about it, but he won't say it. So well, because of the indoctrination of the community, he's like, dude, if I say this, he's like, I'll be excommunicated. He says my fundings will be cut. All my channels will be excommunicated. All my stuff will be thrown out if I carbon date a dinosaur bone. He knows it, and he said it.
Yeah, but
that's science.
But I mean, again, that makes sense. That again, like that's like when they get the consensus of scientists. I mean, there's a consensus of people who pay the consensus of scientists, and they get the science that they ask for in general, right? And like I said, and if they have one who's not there, either they excommunicate him, or they obviously, hey, here's these bags of money. do you want to be?
Do you still want to be a scientist?
I can't help it. I can't help but think of, like, when I think of scientists, I think of Ghostbusters and Bill Murray saying, "Back off, man! I'm a scientist." And like literally, they in that movie, they're kind of saying like they're working for like NYU, and what Dan Aykroyd's saying that I've worked in the private sector. They expect results. And it's like, so they're working for this university doing science. And then literally, obviously, Bill Murray's a con man and the other two are weird. So like that is, to me, that's what science is. And then it's like, but trust me, bro, is my source. Because, hey, look, I'm the one who classified these things as chickens. When, Luke, I want to ask you this question. Like, how did the science ever, if natural selection is a thing and things get, obviously, for predatory reasons, they adapt for their environment, why would it ever, an apex predator, devolve into something that gets eaten a lot?
You gotta stop asking me to defend their narrative. I can't do it.
Yeah.
There's a guy on like YouTube, TikTok. He's a comedian. Anyways, he did a little bit on the dinosaurs turning into chickens. It's pretty funny. It's got, you know, millions of views. But he's like, "This is what we turned into," and he's got a chicken. It's like, how did this happen? So it's a ridiculous story. How would that happen? The theory of evolution doesn't work. They constantly have these ridiculous ideas they want you to believe. You know, things get better over time. The second law of thermodynamics says they don't get better. You know, the simple answer here is that the universe was built fully formed, the earth was built fully formed, man was built fully formed, and everything's been getting worse over time. This is how reality works. So they're constantly trying to force you to believe the opposite of truth, which is that random mistakes could create a higher order and higher functionality. So yeah, it's not hard for them to go from that to dinosaurs turned into chickens. It's all based on anti-logic. It's literally based on anti-truth because their worldview is based on denying Jesus, who is the truth. So you can't make sense of what they do. But what's amazing is that they pull it off effortlessly and people just eat it up. Yeah, you can't explain it. It makes no sense.
Well, for sure. And as that point that you left on, I want to hang on that point for a minute. Is that one of the reasons I have been a very skeptical person when it comes to dinosaurs? For one, it was like when I found out that the skeletons in the museums are fake. And literally, I heard one of the excuses where the reason they don't actually put real dinosaur bones in there because they're radioactive. Have you heard that one, Luke?
No, I haven't.
Yeah, probably because a giant comet or asteroid hit the Earth a million years ago, and then or 66.6 million years ago.
Well, they don't put it on because they do casts of it because they
I know, but that was
fragile.
That was one of the interesting things. Is I think it was last summer or 2 summers ago. I know it was when I was first making TikToks. There was a Tyrannosaurus Rex for sale in China, and it was like obviously one of these skeletons from a museum. And literally, they had to pull the T-Rex skeleton from the auction because too many of the bones were copyright. Because like literally, they were cast from molds from other famous dinosaurs. And so, like to me, that is like I'm very skeptical of like what they actually found, because I think a lot of times you see pictures of skeletons, but we don't really know what they found completely. So as somebody who is a skeptic, I would say that one thing that, again, as I got my research the Smithsonian shirt on, and I got this giant skull. This is obviously could be a real picture.
No, it's fake.
Allegedly, I know it's fake. Bryan, can you let me stick with my joke for 1 second?
Oh.
That yes, I would say that what's interesting, I believe, correct me if I'm wrong, Luke, Robert Plot was the first person to discover a dinosaur bone.
And I thought it was Richard Owen, but I could be wrong.
Mm-hmm.
It might have been Plot and Owen. It might have been like the two different ones, but they both worked for Oxford. So the first person who ever had a dinosaur bone was this man from Oxford University. Well, it was found by another professor at Oxford, but it was hundreds of years later. The original guy thought it was either a Roman elephant, but then he realized it might have been too small. And then he concluded that it was a giant femur bone of a giant humanoid, a giant. And so later, when they decided in the 1800s, when they started discovering dinosaurs, they decided to classify an old bone as something else. I haven't read a book about the Romans. They said Caesar Augustus, the original emperor of Rome, kept dinosaur bones as good luck charms. Except for, side note, he didn't actually believe they were dinosaur bones. He believed they were the bones of giant humans and giant monsters. So it's kind of like that. The idea that man just started finding dinosaur bones, like in this very deceptive time when obviously evolution's getting pushed, atheism, the Big Bang, all the science that denies the Bible. Is it possible that many of the bones, I'm not saying all the animal bones are not animals, but is it possible that many of giant bones that are found could literally be the bones of giant humanoids and not actually giant lizards or chickens?
Bryan?
They put that on display. It's interesting that you have the research of the Smithsonian, because that particular image you have on your shirt was actually created for a competition. For those that don't know, the Smithsonian put out a competition. Listen, I don't know did you know about this, JT? They put out a competition to see if people could make photoshopped faked images of giants. Okay, and a bunch of people all over the internet in the world submitted all these photoshopped faked images of them digging up dinosaur bones of giants. It was a competition put on by the Smithsonian. Why would they want to fake a narrative hiding up, pretending like they found giant skeletons? Because they did it on purpose. So that way, if you came across any real photos of us digging up dinosaur or giant skeletons of giants, they could cover it up. And that was part of the whole gist of what they did. But like, there was real documentation in history, even in Josephus's writings.
This is the psyop.
Yeah, that's a psyop. Straight up.
As Bryan almost fact checked a meme,
Right.
but no, you're correct. But yeah, I believe that's the truth. Is that when you go look, if you go look up giant discoveries, you'll find obviously the most ridiculous pictures, and I think that obviously is by design, and that's why
intentional.
It's kind of like when Disney makes a movie called Frozen, and so when you research Disney Frozen, you don't actually see a picture of a blue Walt Disney in a cryogenic chamber. You get Elsa and Anna and a dumb snowman. So I believe that's the truth. But I mean, I think that's the thing. It's like, so again, the point being, it's interesting. You go back to what I said. This guy found a giant femur bone. Where was the rest of the skeleton? Obviously, if it was some big old Tyrannosaurus Rex, would he say, I think that might be an elephant or a giant man? No, he only found the one bone. And I think that to me is like, could possibly be like, I always wonder, what did they actually find versus what did they say they found? Because you could go all the way back to the Brontosaurus. As we were kids, we were told about Pluto and the Brontosaurus, right? Well, later on, Pluto's not really a planet. And by the way, the Brontosaurus is actually not a real dinosaur, because the guy who supposedly found it found a head somewhere far away from wherever they did. And he said, this is the head. So like, how often do they find anything that actually remotely resembles whatever they show in animation?
Bryan?
Luke. I want to read you this verse. This is interesting. This is from Josephus's writings. I don't know if you guys have read. It says, for which reason they removed their camp to Hebron when they had taken it, and they slew the inhabitants there till they left a race of giants, whose bodies so large and countenance so entirely different of other men that they were surprising to the sight and terrible to the hearing. The bones of these men are still shown to this very day, unlike any credible relation of other men. Mm-hmm. So there was some different looking giant
sons of
bones.
Anakin, or Anak probably.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And they said that, and the bones looked weird. And this is Josephus's writing in the Roman record, guys. He talked about there being bones of giant people that were unlike those of natural men. And so it's almost like they just distorted the perspective even further.
Herodotus, I mean, all those guys tell the story. Now, it's possible that, some of them were mistaken. They were some other thing. They weren't actually human giant bones. There could have been biases or whatever. But I think my take in response to what JT said is that, it's kind of similar to my flat earth take. It's like, it's hard enough to convince someone that they lied to us about the Big Bang or, deep time or whatever. You're going to lose so many people when you go, so therefore the earth is flat, that I get concerned. You mentioned the word psychological operation. I get concerned when true information becomes extremized and then weaponized. We saw this with QAnon. We've seen it at other times. So what I think my response to that would be, what hill do we want to die on? And it's one thing to say dinosaurs were here more recently and they were killed in the flood. Everybody wanted to know what happened to dinosaurs. They were killed in the flood. And then the dragon myth is, humans hunting them to extinction. I think we have a lot better chance of getting that information into someone's mind than to say, they weren't real, or to try to explain away that, all the dinosaur bones were misinterpreted. Now, the truth again is always more nuanced and more in the middle. It's very likely that the historians in the past did find something that was a bone and they thought it was a giant human bone or a cyclops or whatever, and so they misinterpreted that. Or maybe even the elites at the time said, we have this, therefore it validates our story or whatever. So it's not that we can trust them fully in the past, or distrust them fully, but to me the bigger thing here is to take the information that we're talking about and explain that there is an intended controlling of the information related to basically hiding the biblical account and hiding the flood and hiding the dinosaurs were here more recently. Because the thing about these dinosaurs, if what I absolutely agree with Bryan, 25,000 years is if you even want to say 50,000 years, the max that any kind of carbon-based tissue can exist, even if you put it at 50,000 years, that's a hundredth or a thousandth of the amount of time should have happened, should survived if the dinosaurs were as old as they say they were. If it came out tomorrow, that like what you're talking about with Jack Horner, they've carbon dated dinosaur bones. They were here, who cares, 10,000, 5,000, 12,000, 20,000 years ago. The entire narrative falls apart. Their house of cards this can be the foundational exploding corner that gets taken out and the whole thing comes tumbling down. So to me, it's like, let's tell the world that they found soft tissues in dinosaur bones and that we also have dinosaurs at the top layer of strata, which is another video that I have. How do you explain that if the stratigraphy and the stratigraphic column is trustworthy? This whole story about dragons, everybody, most civilizations, not everybody, civilizations all around the world tell 3 stories that are synced up. A global flood or a flood. The gods were mad. A guy builds a boat. There's 200 of those stories. Giant humans. Everybody has this story. Native Americans, Aboriginals, Greece. Everybody has this story. Dragons. Everybody has this story. How does this happen? Well, it's all reconciled by the biblical narrative. So to me, like that's the intention here, is to try to get your foot in the door. This is what I do with VOR, with science and logic and reason, and try to, get them to start to question these things. And for me personally, if I said the earth was flat, then most of the stuff that, because I don't believe it's flat personally, most of the stuff I'm talking about with the Big Bang or whatever would be immediately dismissed because I'm a flat earther. If I say dinosaur bones aren't dinosaur bones, they're like, whatever, you're a conspiracy theorist, which I am, but I don't need to lose them at dinosaur bones are real or not, because they can be dinosaurs. They can be misinterpreted like Bryan just said. I love what he just said. I made like 5 notes when he was talking. The idea that they took different periods of the gestation of the maturity of the dinosaur and turned it into 8 species that were very similar. This fit the idea of speciation. This is great. There's thousands and thousands and thousands of dinosaurs, and they're all slightly derivated because of evolution. No, there's 20 dinosaurs. They're unique, specific individuals, and that's actually validated by the fossil record. There's no transitional fossils of dinosaur bones. So to me, we go more mainstream with this, and we have enough information that going the other way and like starting to question it, the risk reward isn't there for me. I don't want to die in that hill.
Well, I would just say that for me, I guess I remember this, my original take was because like what happens a lot is, again, that the dinosaurs are used to question the biblical timeline. And I think that's why, again, like I said, I don't feel like that if you showed me a fossil that I need to have an answer for that as a Christian. It's like, to me, it's kind of irrelevant for the most part. Because again, I'm not denying old things died and things became fossils. Like that's not a thing. But interesting, like, again, it's about perspective and semantics. So if you called them dragons, that would probably be more historically accurate, because we don't believe as Christians that there was this race of monsters that lived before man did. I mean, and that, again, that's the story of the dinosaur, is that literally giant monsters, like the story of literally Godzilla, primordial monsters ruled the earth at one point, and then they were taken out. And that's why we don't have any real history of them. When you think about it,
Nephilim.
Well, but if you think, if you think about it, like, but again, men wrote about Nephilim. Men wrote about dragons. They wrote about all these things. It's like, that's not, to me, that's why like the dinosaur is a way of explaining away certain mythologies. Even you could say, like, so I was reading this book. It was written by a college professor about the Romans. And so he was saying that Caesar Augustus, obviously, again, I dismiss any kind of idea that the ancient peoples weren't smart. And they were too dumb to come up with a name for these things. So when he said he either thought he had bones of giant humans, which again Josephus writes about, or monsters, is it possible that he was literally talking about dragons? But like the guy didn't want to say that Caesar Augustus believed in dragons, and he would rather just say monsters. You know what I'm saying? And I want to read real quick. I want to go into the Bible real quick, and I'll let you guys talk for a while. But like this often gets used as Christians who try to basically, I feel like they try to hedge their bets where it's like, hey, we're not crazy. The Bible talks about dinosaurs too. And Bryan and I were just reading about this. Everyone always says behemoth is a dinosaur. Let's actually read what the verse says in Job chapter 40, starting with verse 15. And I'm going to explain to you that you're reading into the text what you want it to say. Okay, it says, Behold behemoth, which I have made as I made you. It eats grass like an ox. Behold, its strength is in his loins. His power is in the muscles of his belly. He makes his tail stiff like a cedar. The sinews of his thighs are knit together. His bones are tubes of bronze. His limbs are like bars of iron. He is first of the works of God. Let him who made him bring near his sword. For the mountains yield food for him, while all the wild beasts play. Under the lotus plants he lies, in the shelter of the reeds in the marsh. For his shade is the lotus trees that cover him. The willows of the brook surround him. Behold, if the river is turbulent, he is not frightened. He is confident through the Jordan, rushes against his mouth. Can one take him by his eyes or pierce his nose with a snare? Okay, so what everyone always likes to think, and maybe this is the Mandela effect, the Bible, everyone always says that his tail is like a cedar tree because it's big, but it actually doesn't say that. It says his tail is stiff like a cedar. I mean, Bryan and I were actually talking about this. If you kind of read what it says, for one, he eats grass though, so he's not an alligator, but he does kind of sound more like an alligator. He's got really solid bones. And then I'm gonna go right over to. Let me see. I got a verse over here I saved. So here's what Amos 2:9 says about the Amorites. Yet it was I who destroyed the Amorite before them, whose height was like the height of cedars and were strong as the oaks. I destroyed his fruit above the roots and beneath. So the Bible actually says that the Amorites were as tall as the cedars, and Behemoth's tail was only as stiff as a cedar. And I mean, again, I could read into Job 41, which talks about Leviathan, which could either be a literal animal or a spiritual animal. But Job 41 does not describe a dinosaur. Job 41 describes a dragon because it literally says that it breathes fire
out of his.
It literally talks about breathing fire. So behemoth, I would say, is some kind of an animal. What kind of animal it is, I don't know. But there's nothing in there in the text that says it's a brontosaurus, it's a stegosaurus, or whatever. It's some kind of animal that eats grass. And then, but we do know that the Amorites were really big, and they probably had really big bones.
Yeah,
just saying.
It's interesting because so it says you pull Leviathan with a fish hook. So it says it's something that is underwater. Both of these creatures, Leviathan and Behemoth, are underwater creatures. They're big creatures that are in the water, and they are not moved by the water, and they have a big mouth. So it's kind of interesting.
Well, it's kind of like that. It's kind of that idea of I know Michael Heiser talked about it, that to the people long ago, the sea was like death. Literally, if you think about the biblical cosmology, it's there's the great deep, and the great deep was obviously included where Sheol and Hades and all that stuff was. It was a place of death, and it's that's why it's the Leviathan and the Behemoth are spoken about they're more than just regular animals. Yeah. They're obviously they're terrifying things.
So that's true. That's interesting. What I want to mention too is you mentioned Luke about the carbon dating thing, and I'm curious if you had that video, the audio recording where Jack Horner was recorded, because we should just play that audio clip.
Yeah, it'll take me a minute to pull that up if you want to listen to it.
Yeah, pull it up. And then what I want to mention is really interesting is about the carbon dating, because Luke, you mentioned that if we have carbon dating, if we have soft tissue at all in dinosaur bones, that means they cannot be a million years old. And this is a very big deal, because when Mary found the soft tissue in the dinosaur bones, that was the statement. And because what that statement does, this is the importance of finding soft tissue in dinosaur bones. What that statement does, it does two things. Either one, everything about dinosaurs is wrong because we now have carbon in them, and so they're not 65 million years. Or two, everything about carbon dating is wrong. You have one of two options. You can either choose.
I would go with C. they're both crap.
There's a third option, but I'm saying for the scientific community,
false binary.
This is the only two options they got. Yeah, exactly, false binary. But this is the only two options for the scientific variant.
That's true. That's you're correct about that.
They don't have a third option. The third option, of course, is that all of it's a lie and that we don't know, and that maybe it's true, because like if you can carbon date a dinosaur bone, which we can because it has soft tissue, we can carbon date them. They will end up being around 10,000 years old. I know from people that have done this, okay? They end up being about 10,000 years old, which doesn't mean it's 10,000 years old. It just means that it's older than the flood, because the atmosphere in the pre-flood or before the flood, the atmosphere was very different. So there was less carbon in the atmosphere before the flood. So if something says it's 10,000 years old, it may only be like 6,000 or
well,
5.
It's obviously carbon dating is based on the current rate of
it assumes
the way the carbon degrades right now. So
exactly.
I mean, to me, that is obviously very silly if you believe in the millions of years old, like that again, that everything remained constant on this place, that they talk about giant comets hitting this place.
I have to add something there.
Go ahead.
Yeah, go ahead.
So, Brian, you're going to love this if you haven't thought of this. Yes, the pre-flood world was a different atmosphere. Whatever was going on, we have giant mosquitoes and giant beavers and whatever. Man,
there was no rain before the flood.
Yeah.
Another thing that we know, I don't know, Brian, if you've researched this, but the electromagnetic field is been measured for 200 years. Are you familiar with this and what's happened over the last 200 years?
The switching of the poles?
Yes, that's the official explanation. But basically, if the Earth is 4.5 billion years old and they've measured the magnetic field for 200 years, you should see basically no change. You would assume that it would get weaker because of entropy, but 0.00000 whatever percent, because it's 200 years versus 4.5 billion years. Well, they've measured it over 200 years and it's weakened by 9%. In 200 years. This answers all of the carbon dating. I've been wanting to make a video on this. Check out how this happens. It's a little bit science nerdy. I'll try to make it quick. I know Brian's going to like this. Hopefully this adds value. So basically, if you believe the official narrative, carbon-14 is created as solar radiation interacts with the atmosphere up in the ionosphere. So there's an interaction between solar radiation and something in the ionosphere, and this creates carbon-14, which is now it falls down to the earth and is uptaken by biologic entities, living entities. You breathe it in, you eat it in, it's in the food, it's everywhere. So the idea of carbon-14 dating is that once you expire, you're no longer uptaking carbon-14 anymore, and we know the rate that it decays. Therefore, you started with X amount, you have X amount now, it decays at this rate. This is how old you are. That assumes that you uptook the same amount of carbon-14 that is being uptaken today, which is false. Because as the magnetic field gets weaker, in the past, it would have been stronger. And if it were stronger, it would have allowed less solar radiation, which would have then made less carbon-14 be created in the first place. So this 10,000 year number, I mean, we're guessing because we don't know how strong it was in the past. But if it was 50% stronger, then they would have taken up half of the amount of carbon that we're taking in today, which is one of the reasons why we're living a shorter amount of time. But what would happen is, think about it this way. If we take up 100 carbon units today and we lose 1 unit per year, in 50, you die 50 years later, you have 50 units. Okay, we know they died 50 years ago. If in the past we only uptook 50 carbon units at all, and we still have 50 carbon units, then we're going to think, oh, he just died yesterday. The point is, if I lost you guys in that example, there would have been less carbon-14 uptaken, which means that a year of like 10,000 years could have actually easily been 3, 4, 5, 7 or whatever, because they took less carbon-14 up because the magnetic field was stronger.
Yeah. Older things would look even older, basically, is the best way to put that. And there's an interesting thing that also, when it comes to that kind of stuff that I want to mention, is that right now science, because of the findings of Jack Horner as team with Mary Streiser, what they found right now, the national narrative that science is having to adapt because of finding soft tissue in dinosaur bones. They can't say that maybe dinosaur bones aren't 65 million years because that breaks the narrative. And they can't say carbon dating is wrong because that breaks the narrative of everything, So what they're saying now is they're trying to find a caveat to this polarizing dilemma that they're encountering. And they're now saying, well, there are special circumstances in which carbon can be microscopically trapped and under perfect conditions that we just don't understand, where carbon is sealed so perfectly inside of an environment where it somehow preserves the soft tissue for extended periods of time. This is the scientific narrative right now, that they're trying to compensate for the fact that we cannot explain why there is soft tissue in dinosaur bones. The whole scientific community has been thrown off by this, and they're hiding it, and they're trying to play it off like it's not a big deal. It is a very, very, very big deal. And so now you should play that recording.
I will really quickly, just to elucidate what Bryan's saying. This is from the Smithsonian in May of 2006 when Mary Schweitzer had discovered this. Dinosaur shocker. Probing a 68 million-year-old T-Rex, Mary Schweitzer stumbled upon astonishing signs of life that may radically change our view of the ancient beasts. This is the tissues. This is the beginning of their damage control. It's the same thing they did as they've found fully formed galaxies at what should be the beginning of the universe. And they're going, this is crazy. We shouldn't have seen this. But just stick with science. We'll figure this out. We'll figure a way to explain this away. So this is what they're doing here at the beginning. It says it was big news when she found this last year. This is right, pretty close to when the event happened. That T-Rex bones, the first observation of its kind, had soft tissues. The finding amazed colleagues who had never imagined that even a trace of still soft tissues, dinosaur tissue, could survive. After all, as any textbook will tell you, when an animal dies, soft tissue such as blood vessels, muscles, and skin decay and disappear over time, while hard tissues may gradually blah, blah, blah. Schweitzer, one of the individuals, where's the thing I want to say about the 68 million years? Did I lose it there? Did it say 68 million? Oh, here it is.
I think it's at the very top.
There it is.
Yeah,
they would have never imagined that they would have been able to survive that long. And this is what they end up doing in the article. I forget where it is, but they basically say, now we have to figure out why these lasted this long. They didn't say, maybe we're wrong about the age.
Our hypothesis is crap.
Right.
They could not say that.
I wish I missed the wrong part. But instead of saying maybe they were here more recently, they said we would have never thought this would have lasted, but clearly it did. So we'll explain it. And to what Bryan was saying, it's even worse than perfectly preserved. Mary Schweitzer herself is the scientist who, by the way, was a young Earth creationist who went into Jack Horner's office and said, this is why I believe in the Bible. And Jack Horner said, I'm going to convince you otherwise. Something you and I can talk about later, Bryan. But this, she created a experiment where she did something called cross-linking, where she introduced iron into the blood to cause a fusion. And she said, we did this to the dinosaur, to ostrich tissue, and over 2 years, we saw no degradation. Therefore, the theory's true. They threw the experiment away, and they've never touched it again. So they ran an experiment over 2 years and said, look, we didn't see any degradation. Therefore, it lasted 70 million years, and nobody in science will talk about it. And when I bring it up, people go, that was debunked by Mary Schweitzer, the one who found it. No, it wasn't debunked. They did a shoddy, soft lab experiment under perfect conditions, looking for a result, and they now say it's been debunked. And what I always tell people, fine, it didn't degrade after 2 years. Get back to me in 1,000 years. And if it hasn't degraded in 1,000 years, I'll give you the other, 70 million. But 2 years is not enough of a sample size to say they figured this out. But just like Bryan said, for them to just go, we figured it out, nothing to see here. There's no man behind the curtain, move along. That's all they did with this. Because if people really understood what was at play and this, and last thing, I debate atheists all the time. They don't hear about this in school, Bryan. This isn't something this is the most radical, paradigm-changing, remarkable discovery in paleontologic history, quite literally. And no university level student, nobody is being taught this. You want to talk about the control of information? You have to look no further than to understand that every young individual, 20, 25-year-old, 30-year-old that I talk to has never heard of soft tissue. It's literally not in the curriculum. They'll go, here's the stratigraphic record, and here's this proof of evolution, here's all these things, blah, blah, blah. Oh, soft tissues? No, just don't tell them. Just don't tell the people about it.
Well, because as you were saying, as we watched that video earlier with Jack Horner, is that he compared the audience who laughed at him to sixth graders because what they have to teach people in school is to not think critically. What they really try to teach people to do is regurgitate information that are in textbooks written by smart men like Jack Horner. And so like that's the thing. It's like when these things don't make sense to you and you question them and you laugh at them, like you're a conspiracy theorist, you're a science denier, when again, like they actually haven't done what it takes to prove their theory or even make a good case for it.
Yep. This video, it's 8 minutes. I can play it at 1.25 speed. We don't have to watch the whole thing. How much of this do you want to watch? Do you want me to try to find like the really good sound bites, or what do you want to do here, Bryan?
Just get to the good part at the end when he's like basically denying.
Well, this is informative for the viewers. They can skip if they need to. Yeah,
Maybe
I mean, I'll try to do
thing,
it quickly. I
yeah,
think there's a little bit of dead air, but
it's good. There's a good to understand his nuance and his behavior.
Exactly his reaction to this, him laughing and bullying and really gatekeeping this thing at the beginning. So Bob Enyart, how do I say this carefully? Bob Enyart is a conservative, was a conservative talk show host in Denver, very controversial. He succumbed to COVID. And all of he was against certain medical procedures relative to it, and the media celebrated. If you guys want to have fun, look up Bob Enyart and how they celebrate his death of COVID. And I think we all know a little bit about that. Anyways, he was that kind of guy. He was like he did kind of what JT and I do. He's controversial Christian figure, conspiracy theorist, madman, whatever.
Mm-hmm.
So he calls Jack Horner, and if you guys want me to pause it, fast forward, move it, whatever. But your viewers need to see this. This is unbelievable. This is This is on a recorded line. Jack Horner did not know that he was being recorded. Bob Enyart proposed to him, "I will pay you money, a lot of money, if you carbon date that soft tissue you found." And go. Oh.
And side note,
Sorry.
you at the.
Jack, this is Bob Enyart with KLTT.
No, you tell me. I did.
Just go for it. I was going to say that the reason why Jack doesn't, you'll end up hearing what he does. You got to contemplate the reason why is because Jack Horner at this point has already been bought and paid for by the scientific community. And he knows that if he was to do what he's asking him to do, that would be his
career is over.
All of his career would be stripped from him. It would be stripped from him. He would have no funding because he's getting funding right now when he's in this interview for doing a test on the B-Rex. He's trying to find all the DNA data from the B-Rex right now.
What Bryan is saying is so important. This is so important. I'm sorry to keep talking about it, but I've researched a little bit of the NSF records of how money is distributed to science. And based on my counting and going through pages and pages and pages of grants, he's received at least $10 million from the NSF to continue his work in dinosaur, chicken, hybridization, etc. I think he's in his 80s now. He has a very comfortable life. He's made a lot of money. And at this level, they've made an example of the people who have defied them. They've ruined it. I mean, I don't know how far into conspiracy we want to go with this, but you got Fred Hoyle, who questioned the Big Bang, who didn't get the Nobel Prize for nucleosynthesis that he discovered, and they gave it to his two assistants who were just befuddled. You gave this to the assistants. It was his idea. Robert Demadian built the MRI, the first MRI. The Nobel Prize was awarded to his competitor who cannibalized him intentionally. Demadian was a young earth creationist. They blackballed him for this. They will blacklist you. They're blacklisting James Tour currently. James Tour is doing what we do on YouTube as one of the 50 greatest scientists in America because he questioned origin of life science, and he's obliterated the narrative of origin of life science. They will ruin you. They will. People came into James Tour's office and said, "Don't even ask for funding anymore." And so, if you listen to a conversation between John Sanford and James Tour. John Sanford's the guy who discovered genetic entropy, which is the truth that our genetics are entropically disintegrating in up to 10,000 years. We won't even be able to reproduce. It's malfunctioning so quickly. Sanford.
I wonder about our intelligence even. I think our intelligence, to be completely honest, I debate whether we are dumber than our past, which is a big lie that they want to tell everybody. I think
Speak for yourself, guys.
Dude, I just look at all the autistic kids today and I'm like, okay, what's going on in the world? I feel like we're coming down.
That might not be entropy, but anyways, so you've got we are worse. We are devolving. Like it's
unquestionably. I agree
they tell you that the history that in the past the ancestors were cavemen and now we're brilliant. They were brilliant and we're on the way to caveman. It's It's anti. Again,
Yeah, I think so.
I've said this a couple times. I want people to understand this. Their worldview is based on anti-truth. Their worldview is based on denying Jesus, denying Scripture, and Jesus is the Word, to disprove, to debunk, to get the children to disbelieve in this. And Jesus says, I get really frustrated. I've been doing this for 3 years full time. And, I sleep well at night knowing that Jesus is going to judge these people. And he said very specifically, do not cause a stumbling block. Don't hurt the children. And these people are going to meet God, and they're going to find out how wrong they were. But their worldview is based on anti-truth. So it's anti-logic. Here's an example of anti-logic. I can't do it. That'd be too controversial to say. I'm not going to say it. Their whole worldview is based on anti-logic. We're getting worse. They say we're getting better. We're made in the image of God. They say we're made in the image of chimp, etc. So, and this, they will, like, I get all the time people come in, they go, oh, well, peer review. No, it's not what this is. It's kind of like, I'll get a little bit controversial. I'm researching the Catholic Church right now. I don't want to offend anybody. If you're a Catholic, I love you. I'm frustrated by the Catholic institution. The Pope is God. You can't question their divine council. They decide what's right, and no one can question it. Science works the same way. Egypt works the same way. This is how you control people. You control the information, the jump ball kind of things, that the esoteric information that the lay person doesn't have. The God kings interpret it for you and tell you what to believe. And if you question it, you're outcast. You could be excommunicated. You could be kicked out of the Mormon church. You could be kicked out of the Amish church. You could be kicked out of the Catholic church. You can be kicked out of science. It's the control of information, and these guys are the priests of the religion of science. And Jack Horner knows this. And if Jack Horner's like, okay, I'm in a situation, be just shut down, which is a big deal. Jack Horner isn't going to go manage a Burger King, okay? He needs to do science. And so it's like, what? Oppose the empire and be taken out? No, I'm going to play ball here. And whatever level of incriminating evidence or blackballing is going on here, which is remarkable that you have that insight with knowing him individually. He knows better. You don't beat them. You
can't serve both God and money.
Okay. This video now. Share screen. We'll try to, if you guys want to cut it off at any time, JT, it's your show. So, this is dragging on, whatever. I'm putting it at 1.25 speed. Please watch the nuance, what Bryan said, of how Jack is taking this information. He doesn't know he's being recorded, how he's responding. This is how you gatekeep information. And I have a new empathy for him after what Bryan's told me. But okay, here we go.
Yellow.
Hello, Jack. This is Bob Enyart with KLTT Radio in Denver.
Uh-huh.
How are you doing?
Good.
Jack, I sent a letter to Bob Harmon a few weeks back offering the museum a grant of $8,000 to do a carbon-14 date test of that soft tissue T-Rex you guys dug up. And he said he would forward that to you. And I'm wondering if you saw that or considered it.
Well, carbon-14 doesn't work on something that old.
I understand that. And normally we wouldn't expect to get soft tissue out of a T-Rex skeleton either. But sometimes science proceeds by crossing your T's and dotting your I's. And you guys might have other things you'd like to carbon-14 at the same time. In fact, in the last couple of weeks, I've been able to raise a little more money. So that's up to $10,000 now that we'd be honored to give you guys if you would consider doing that test.
Well, we can't do that test.
You can't do that.
No.
You mean the museum doesn't have the laboratory?
We certainly don't.
Okay, well, we're happy to pay the expense of having a lab do the test in addition to the $10,000 to the museum.
You know how carbon-14 is?
Yeah, I'm familiar, and I realize it's useless for anything over maybe 50,000 years or so. But I've done a talk show in Denver for 15 years, and there's a group of folks interested in science. Of course, that discovery caught their attention, and they thought, well, it'd be logical to do this, to just go ahead and do it, even though nobody would be inclined to do it, just like nobody would be inclined to look for soft tissue inside of a T-Rex.
Well, yeah, and, we're still trying to figure out what it is, what it's actually made of.
Right, exactly, whether it's hemoglobin or whatever.
Well,
Jack, is the amount too small that it's just not worth the consideration?
No, that's not it.
Okay. What if I were able to raise more money?
No, the amount of money has nothing to do with it. Because carbon-14 doesn't work on something like this.
Right.
Your results that you get can be all over the place.
Well, they should be infinity. It should be not dateable. In other words, it shouldn't come back saying it's 25,000 years old.
Right.
It should be infinity. And so that'll be a worthwhile.
Well, infinity isn't exactly what you get.
Okay.
I mean, it's like trying to date a piece of concrete.
Right. You
have to have carbon in it.
Right. You wouldn't use carbon-14. Now, the skeleton is not fossilized. Isn't that true, or largely not?
Well, it's the bone is made of calcium phosphate.
Mm-hmm.
Like I say, we're still trying to figure out what the actual soft tissue is.
Right. And we were hoping that a test like this would just add another bit of scientific information that you would have at your disposal. And also, in that grant letter, we asked if it could be a blind test with 5 different specimens, and therefore then the museum could test 4 other specimens that you might want to have carbon-14 dated. And so you could put it all in the same batch. In those testing, then we'll pay the cost of that. That'll be free to the museum plus the $10,000 grant.
By the way, this is 125 speed. That's how long that pause is.
Let me tell you where I'm coming from here.
Sure.
All right. Obviously, your group is a group of creationists.
Yes.
And the spin they can get off of it,
right,
doing it, is
the spin.
Not going to help us.
Yeah. So even though it's just a scientific test, they're not asking for.
It's not actually a scientific test. That's what I'm trying to tell you.
Carbon-14 dating something with soft tissue in it. Jack, if I could raise $20,000, would it be worth?
I will talk to Mary Schweitzer about it.
Okay, I appreciate that. And how about this? I'll resend
He'll talk
you
to
the
Mary,
grant letter
who works for him. Okay.
Yeah.
20,000 in it. And then you could talk to Mary, and we'll see where it goes.
I want to know what group is sponsoring it.
Okay,
it's I
I
need some really specific details about.
Sure.
And don't just tell it to me straight.
Of
okay.
course. I've hosted a daily talk show for 15 years. We're on a 50,000 watt AM station, KLTT, and there's a local church here, Denver Bible Church, that's offered to help. But we also have pledges from any number of individuals in the Denver community.
Okay.
So we could, if you guys agree, we could send you the check within 24 hours.
Okay. Well, let me talk to Mary, and let me just talk to a few people.
Okay.
Because I don't want to, I can't afford to have it turn into a circus.
Right. Well, I do understand.
You can't afford it.
So
okay. I will see Mary this next week.
Oh,
so this is the end of the video. That's the very end. But that he starts, Brian, I can't wait to get your take on this. He starts to disclose there. Oh, it's not just Mary. I can't afford this. The young Earth creationists, the spin they will get off this. Look, very simply.
He already knows what it's going to say.
He does. He does know. He's done it.
Just take over.
So he won't tell people though. He's not going to tell people. So because he can't take it, because if he tells people, he would lose all of his funding, all of his grant money, all of his resources would be cut from him, because he knows that those people in control are and now he sides with them to some degree. He's like partnering with them. He's very cautious of how he acts. But the fact that he even entertains people like me or Mary, who's has young Earth theories at all, is because he is an individual and he knows the scientific community is jack backwards. Okay. But literally, he knows that if he does it, it's going to be a problem. And the reason why right now, just so you guys know, if the dinosaur bones, they don't use carbon dating. They use a process of potassium argon dating, which is another type of of dating method. That's how they date dinosaur bones. So we could have been carbon dating dinosaur bones from the beginning. We know this from the beginning. They all come around.
There can't be carbon after 3,000 years. And this is the first thing you would do as a scientist when you make this discovery, is you would go, let's carbon date this thing, because there looks to be organic material. If you have organic material, you have carbon. Period. So you go, well, there shouldn't be. Jack, what's great is Bob had done his research, and he goes, yeah, it shouldn't be dating, but there's soft tissues in there. Those shouldn't be there too. Let's test the thing. He goes, no, you can't do that. If you have organic material, you have carbon. And the first thing you do if you're a scientist is you go, we got to carbon date this. And when I 100% believe, Brian, that he did this because any scientist would do this. And this is how this happened in my mind. Holy Moses, They're soft tissues. Somebody get a carbon date on this. They came back as 10 to 25,000 years, whatever the number is. And they closed the door and they said, we're cooked. We're absolutely cooked. How do we stop this? This is and it's exactly Jack being selected, Mary, the whole thing, damage control. And one of the biggest cons in maybe the history of reality, and that probably the biggest, maybe the biggest con in science ever.
You know, I would argue that when they found it, I'm pretty sure someone showed up into his office and probably said, "Hey, listen,
JT,
you're gonna do this." Yeah, they said, "Hey, listen,
you got any bones, the big ones?"
Yeah. They said you're gonna research this topic, but you are not going to carbon date it. And here is $10 million. Shut your mouth and be done with it. Like, I almost guarantee you something like that happened. That's how he paid off all his debt and everything, because he owns all the
okay. So guys, as we continue the dinosaur discussion, why would I believe anything that these people say at this? You know what I mean? Like, when you kind of say, like, it's like when you see that, like, that they are obviously suppressing real truth, and then how would I know anything that they said was true based on this kind of behavior, which is clearly, again, they could have found a young animal. I mean, for all we know is they found parts of old bones, and then they were like, well, we need another big bone to fill the skeleton out. And they found out, oh shoot, they just tested that one. It's actually not that old. I don't know how there's carbon in them. Obviously, I believe that all the bones are young enough that, besides, they're all under 10,000 years old. But my point being is that these people are obviously paid to say things, and I want to pivot to this at this point in a little bit, that the fossil fuel industry has Luke, I know you've done videos about fossil fuels, so how would, who probably pays for all the scientists, why would I trust anything this guy says after this, even including his, again, like the boy who cried wolf? Well, he did say that one thing that was true, but why would I ever
I'm with
believe
you on
him
the boy who cried wolf. Science has done this. And when I'm debating people, the single piece of evidence in favor of deep time and their whole model is radiometric dating. Sorry, not radiocarbon dating. Radiocarbon dating actually works for us. Radiometric dating is a good piece of evidence for what they believe. Now, give it time, and I am 100% confident that their flaw in their logic or their manipulation of the data will be exposed. And I've exactly said what you just said, JT. They've lied enough times. Nebraska man, Piltdown man, Haeckel's embryos. I mean, we could go down the list of where they just bold-faced, British Royal Society, whoever, they just lied. And they said, this is the evidence. And people were like, oh, I believe this. So I don't believe them. Sorry. When they say you must believe me here, I'm just as skeptical as you, and maybe not just as skeptical. I'm skeptical like you. I'll say it that way. And they've cried wolf too many times. They're not trustworthy. Absolutely. As far as why would we trust them about dinosaurs? I mean, again, do we have to die on that hill? I don't think so. And there's people that I have a video here of Paul Sereno. They have dinosaurs sticking out of the ground. People find them all the time. Kids trip over them. Some version of.
Well, again, but again, as I have to continue to repeat this point, dinosaur means monstrous lizard. They literally say that they're not lizards anymore.
Yeah.
So we continue to call them terrible lizards when they say that they're not. And I almost wonder, did they say that they're actually chickens now in order to say, you know what else is a terrible lizard? The Leviathan. That's a terrible lizard, right? And actually, I want to read this real quick because people were requesting Job 41. And I was saying that this is interesting, because biblically, this is a terrible, monstrous lizard. If by definition, that's probably, isn't it interesting that it's an old Greek word? And if they didn't know anything about these things, what were they talking about when they're talking about terrible lizards?
Nephilim.
Just saying. Okay, so I'm gonna skip down to let's see. I want to skip down to verse 7 of Job 41. Can you fill his skin with harpoons or his head with fishing spears? Lay your hands on him. Remember the battle. You will not do it again. Behold, hope of a man is false. He is laid low even at the sight of him. No one is as fierce as he dares to stir him up. Who then who can stand before him? Who has first given to me that I should repay him? Whatever is under the whole of heaven is mine, and I will not keep my silence concerning his limbs. In the mighty strength of his goodly frame, who can strip him his outer garment? Who can come near him with a bridle? Who can open the doors of his face? Around his teeth is terror. With his back is made of rows of shields, shut up closely as with a seal. One is so near to another that no air can come from between them. Sounds like dragon scales. They are joined one to another, and they clasp each other and cannot be separated. His sneezing flashed forth like light. His eyes are like eyelids of dawn. Out of his mouth go flaming torches. Sparks of fire leap forth. Out of his nostril come forth smoke. As from boiling pot of burning rushes, his breath kindles coals. His flame comes forth from his mouth. His neck abides strength, and terror dances before him. The folds of his flesh are stick together, firmly cast him in immovable. His heart is hard as stone, hard as lower millstone. He raises himself up, mighty are afraid. At the crashing they beside themselves. Though a sword reaches him, it does not avail, nor a spear, the dart, or the javelin. He counts iron as straw, the bronze as rotten wood. The arrow cannot make him flee from him. Slings and stones turn to stubble. Clubs counted as stubble. He laughs and rattles at javelins. His underparts are like sharp potsherds. He spreads himself like a threshing sledge on the mire. He makes the deep boil like a pot. Again, like at the sea. He makes the sea like a pot of ointment. Behold, he leaves the shining in the wake, and one think of the deep white-haired. One would think of the deep to be white-haired. On the earth is not like a creature without fear. He is everything that is everything that is high. He is the king of the sons of pride, which is interesting. So that's the last verse. But what's interesting is there's a number of the New Living Translation say of all the creatures, he's the proudest. He's the king of beasts. What Job 41 describes to me, think about who's the king of the monsters. Bryan, who's the king of the monsters? Godzilla.
Godzilla, yeah.
Godzilla is literally, I mean, like if you read Job 41, it's like literally describing like Godzilla.
That is,
and again,
Godzilla.
That is a whatever the Leviathan is, whether it's a spiritual, physical thing, that is a terrible lizard. And so, like, to me, like that's kind of where I fall back, is that the Bible talks about obviously crazy beasts like the behemoth. It talks about Leviathan. You know, the ancients talked about, again, like we talk about the Chinese zodiac has all real animals and it's got a dragon on there, right? Mm-hmm. It's like, it's kind of weird that the dragon's the fake thing. All around the world, they talk about, you know, plumed serpents, dragons, weird creatures. There's obviously lots of tales of sea monsters. Okay, so what are these bones other than a narrative? That's what I'm trying to say. That's what I'm trying to get at. What is this other than a story to conflict with what we believe? Because outside of that, I really don't know. Because again, like as we pointed through and we went through like the pictures of things with no skin on them, and what would you think that they were? Like you feel like anybody with a big bag full of money from some executive and a wild imagination could come up with anything anybody wanted them to say.
Well, you should bring up what an ostrich skeleton looks like actually right now. Can you do that with your videos VR? Of course. Like look it up, Luke. Because like I would love to look up an ostrich or look up a T-Rex skeleton. I don't know if you can make my phone. I mean, like that's very clearly. I don't know if it will.
Well, yeah, like here I got one. I got one on here. I can share.
Look up the ostrich skeleton and then look up the T-Rex skeleton, because when we look at the two in comparison, it's very clear. Like, okay, yeah, ostrich skeleton, T-Rex skeleton. And so we look at the T-Rex and we look at its stupid little arms and we're like, oh, look at those dumb little arms. Okay, well, dude, look at an ostrich skeleton. Ostriches have the same stupid little arms. And guess what? Look at the actual, click on that actual ostrich, the real one, and you can see that the actual ostrich skeleton has the same two little stupid hands the T-Rex has. So, like, that should tell you right there that the dragon is the T-Rex.
Because, because they could have been wings.
Well, yeah, well, exactly. So hold on. Type in Weirvern.
Yes.
Okay, right now.
Yeah,
type
spell
in
that,
Weirvern.
JT.
Okay, now you're really trying to
Wyvern.
Okay, W.
But wait, close your screen, JT.
Oh, is my screen up?
So that way his screen's bigger.
How? What?
Yeah, your screen's still up.
Oh shoot.
And then
I don't think it
Just
is
say
up.
stop
Is it up,
sharing.
JT?
Stop sharing.
It
I
doesn't
see
show.
it.
Okay,
Let me
that's
see if
fine.
I
I'll
can,
try to. I don't know how to get rid of it when I don't. Yeah.
Just click
But it
share.
doesn't. Mine
and
just
then
shows
stop sharing.
share, and then let me see if I actually.
Well, why don't you?
All right,
why
here we
don't
go.
you
Now
try
I'm
to look
sharing.
at the
Now
weird
I'm
version?
officially sharing. Okay.
The
Well,
weird.
this is how I spelled ostrich skeleton, so we're not in good shape. Ostrich slipping, flipping. Okay, what are we looking up here?
Wyvern. It's WYVERN.
Skeleton,
Wyvern.
or just
Okay?
wyvern.
So I want to explain something to you. Just wyvern. And so and go to images, and you're gonna see a depiction here real quick. Okay, I want you to look at this. And wait, JT, get your screen off then.
Is mine on? Is mine on?
This is funny.
Yeah, yours is on.
Now yours. I think I see both of
Oh, shoot.
ours. Do you see that, Brian? Okay. I
Yeah.
can get rid of mine if
Yeah,
JT's having a hard time getting rid of his. Because before, when you asked me to exit out, I couldn't, but now I can.
JT, make us all full screen or something. I don't know.
Let me see. This is a live show, guys. This is not something we normally have to deal with on the
Do you want
Decoding
me to
Bible
end my screen and you
podcast,
can just use yours?
But yet here we are.
Okay.
Yeah, go
Sweet.
go ahead. Yeah, go ahead and end yours. See if you can.
No, it didn't
What?
work. It didn't end it. Did you just end yours? Yeah.
Vio, we're good. Let's just stop sharing screens.
I got
for
no
now.
screen share happening on my end, so
Bring your screen back. Bring your screen share back on. We'll use yours VOR.
Yeah,
Okay.
just go ahead and use yours,
this
and
is
we'll do
happening.
the best we can.
Live
with it.
show. Oh, I just opened up
just bring yours back on.
DaVinci Resolve. That helps us. All right, Wyvern and share. Okay, now both of our screens.
And then JT, you can right click on your screen if you see it, and then close it.
Okay, so here's Wyvern.
But anyways, the
Just images.
okay, so what we'll do is now just look at the images real quick, and then see. I want you to look at those, and I want you to see the second image.
This one
there.
here.
The second image.
Okay.
Yeah, that shows all of them. It shows all that one right there. Okay. So I want to describe something to you guys. Those that don't understand the difference between dragons and dinosaurs, there is a multiple different names of dragons. Okay. There is the worm, okay, which is like a worm, right? And then there's the wyvern, which has feet, but no front hands. Okay. That is a T-Rex right there. It has feet, but that is a T-Rex skeleton, and this is actually the dragon. So then we've got the typical dragon, which has 4 feet plus wings, and then a drake, which has no wings but just legs. So that drake, that's any dinosaur that you run into. Okay, and then there's and these are water things. The lindworm is in his no, and I don't know what that one is, and the amphitheater, that's not his one. But the ones that I know is the worm, the wyvern, the dragon, and the drake. And these are very specific. Now, if you just close out of your view, you can look up because you typed in wyvern, type in old drawings. You'll notice that all the drawings on shields and stuff,
so
get out of that view, I guess.
Okay, so that's, do you just see just JT's right now, or what do you see? I'm so lost in this. Okay, that's fine.
I
so
see yours.
We'll go here and
see your screen.
Share this guy if it'll let me, which is what's fun. Yeah, it must just be my side. It's all glitching out. All right, let's go to. Okay,
no, I'm seeing it too. Yeah. Well, actually, I'm seeing just yours, but I think I'm looking at the live feed.
Okay,
live.
Google search.
Perfect, you're live.
Okay.
Now type in wyvern, so WYVERN, and then type in old.
Wyvern
type in
old.
This is like that movie, How to Train Your Dragon.
Yeah.
Like
okay,
this,
so now
this is like all the species in there.
Okay, type in not wyvern. Type in wyvern drawing. Type in drawing. Sorry.
Okay, that's not spelled right. That is now spelled right. Okay. Is it not doing it? Should we do like a shield?
Why isn't it doing it? Just type in wyvern dragon or wyvern shield. Try that.
Symbol.
Wyvern
Okay, cool.
symbol or icon or
there's an
something
M
like
there
that.
normally. Okay. Is that getting somewhere?
There we go. That's getting somewhere. Okay. There we go. So do you see these old depictions? You see these on everything. Just click on the top left one right there as an example. Now we saw do the one to the left there. The one to the left is actually a symbol for something. So the one, that yellow one right there. Okay. So this one is an actual old school drawing.
Wow.
That's a T-Rex, guys. That's a T-Rex right there. You're looking at a T-Rex. They have depicted its tail as being curly, but they didn't know that because they saw its skeleton that it means that it's a T-Rex. That's what a T-Rex is. Those stupid little hands that T-Rex has?
Wow.
That's what they are. They're wings. And you can see this over and over. You'll notice that dragons in drawings and in old things won't have front hands. They only have 2 feet, a tail, and their giant head. Like, that's what dragons are. And so if you go back, you can see other ones. Go back and you can see the other ones in the
See, now we're getting somewhere as far as I'm concerned, because I think that, again, like that, again, if man was contemporary with these monsters,
Right.
then there would obviously be more evidence than just old skeletons and fossils.
It's not,
because again, we don't believe in this stuff, and I think so. I mean, to me, that makes sense. It's kind of like you don't have to answer for every kind of bone you find, but I mean, I do think that, to me, that the reason why there's this completely different story that obviously it kills 2 birds with 1 stone. It kills the biblical narrative, but it also kind of negates a lot of mythologies that obviously are very unified around the world about these other beings, like these other kinds of creatures that are dragons.
Yep, exactly. And so people don't understand, but that's the typical dragon that you'll see on a lot of seals. You'll see it on a lot of items. You'll see it on a lot of things. You'll see that dragon. You'll see it with wings and only feet, and it'll have a curly tail. Who's to say that the tail was curly? I don't think it was. Yeah. I don't think the T-Rex tail curled. I think the T-Rex's tail was probably straight, but they've exaggerated it to the point where it gets like this. Now, when you see a dragon with 4 feet and wings, that is not the traditional drawing of a dragon. The traditional drawing of a dragon has 2 feet and 2 wings, and it's stupid, and it looks like a T-Rex. So anytime you see a T-Rex, you're looking at a dragon, guys. You're looking at a dragon, and we hunted them to extinction. We hunted them to the point where we killed them. We killed them off. Who's to say they were even violent? We don't know. They could have easily been just chill, like they could have just not think humans were deadly, but maybe they were dangerous if you snapped at them. Maybe they were like ignorant. Like I've seen people be in the water with alligators and they don't kill you.
Well, isn't it? What's interesting about the mythology of dragons, and like obviously the culture, you have you think about like the desolation of Smaug or whatever, like the Hobbit movies, and the dragons are usually not just dumb animals like they would depict dinosaurs to have like tiny brains. They were actually smart. They could talk and all this kind of stuff. To me, I can't help but think of the idea that seraphim angels are like serpentine, or there's some kind of other kind of a thing that are again, the serpent in the garden was more than just a snake. Is it possible that was like the dragon from the Bible is literally some kind of a dragon? Like that again, the serpent is, it's not called a snake, it's called a serpent. Serpents are depicted, and especially in Chinese mythologies, as having feet and stuff like that. It's literally a snake with these kind of tiny little legs that flies. Yeah. Is that kind of what possibly the dragon from the Bible is describing?
It's very interesting. Honestly, it's a very interesting topic. But when you look into these things and you look at the ostrich skeletons and you look at the skeletons that we found, and we look at the historical drawings of these kind of things, something is misplaced, and there's a drawing of a stegosaurus on the side of the temple of the Aztec temple.
I've seen that. Yeah, I've seen that. That's really old. And I know, Luke, you did a video about this once. Wasn't it a famous Peter Bruegel painting that he paints all these people walking. There's just there's things that look like things that look like dinosaurs in the background of
brachiosauruses that they're writing,
and that's from and I think he's a painter from the 1500s, I believe.
They're writing.
Yeah, I'll pull that up. I'll try. I'm having such a weird glitch thing. I've entirely closed out of Chrome except for this one tab, and it's still showing my screen. So, anyways, let's see if I put this in. I always have weird glitchy things with this MacBook. So I'm going to show you the Suicide of Saul. That's one of those that I actually had set up. So let's go to this, share this tab instead. So yeah, this is it. It's I had pulled up on there the Quora and Reddit about it, and everybody goes, they're camels. it's like they're camels. That's what they say. Matter of fact, they're not camels. Anyways, yeah, if you have any intuition, it's like Jack Horner.
That's a literally don't
right, you guys are as bad as sixth graders
situation. That's not what you actually see. It's like the Jedi mind trick. Those are camels.
Those are camels. Yeah. Those are, it goes even more interesting than this, actually, than them being camels. The more interesting part is that look how big they are riding those. And I want to share something to you guys that maybe you don't consider because these are brachiosauruses. Those are giant people also and here's the interesting part. They're called burden bearers. We call elephants burden bearers. And I'm going to explain something to you because we've got the word El, like as in Michael, Gabriel. Okay,
elephant.
Yeah, elephant. Well, guess what El means? El means of God, and font means to present the gods. So the gods would ride elephants, and so that's why they worship elephants in India. That's why they rode these creatures. They rode the elephants. They rode the brachiosauruses, the brontosaurs. They rode them as their burden bearers.
Chinese.
You know what?
They treated them like horses, like we treat horses.
You know what's interesting, Bryan?
It's all over there like that.
I know you've watched all the movies. I'm sure you have too, Luke. The Lord of the Rings. So the Lord of the Rings. You know how like obviously it's this like what I maybe just would imagine as like a pre-flood world is how crazy it is. But what's funny in that movie, if you really think about it, when like Frodo and Sam see an elephant, they are totally blown away.
Yeah.
All the weird stuff that's in this world. It's like they're never going to. I think they actually even say they're never going to believe that we saw an elephant. Mm-hmm. Isn't that kind of funny? Like in this completely fantasy universe.
The thing is, it's not a fantasy universe, really, because Lord of the Rings, he was pulling from esoteric old books. So
I know, but I guess my point is, I think
it's a fantasy.
So why, so what is the emphasis of them pointing out an elephant?
There's a very big significance to it because the elephants were the burden bearers. They were the beasts of burden because the beasts rode on them. It wasn't beasts of burden as in they were a beast and they carried burdens. They were beasts of burden because the beasts rode on them. The hybrid Nephilim, human offspring, the beasts rode elephants, the elephants, the El to present the gods. And that's why they worship them everywhere they go. And you see this over and over. And they were known as being the bird. In fact, there's a story about the giants using woolly mammoths in North America as their carriers. Okay. And there's a whole thing written about this in some documents that I read. It was like a book where they talked about how the giants would use the woolly mammoths as like horses and stuff, and they would ride them around. And so that's why there is an emphasis. That's why they're called elephant, to present the gods. That's font means to present, El means gods. So like literally that's happening right now. You're witnessing the beginning of present the god. That would be an elephant, actually. Realistically, that creature right there would be called an elephant. It wouldn't just be so. Like it makes me wonder. Like when we see the word elephant in old writings, did it mean the same thing as what we know today, or does the word elephant mean dinosaur in some instances? You don't really know because we don't have the terminology for it. Because elephant
to
just
tie
means
that together,
to present the gods.
Marco Polo said that the elites of China, the royalty of China, rode these dragons. Like that's Marco Polo historically saying that they were the beasts of burden for the royalty only. Like the layperson couldn't have a dinosaur car, but the elites had the serpents that they were riding around on.
Okay, so that's a point I want to stick with for just 1 second. Again, if you found like mammoth bones or like other kinds of bones like that are like elephants, and you didn't find a head, couldn't you kind of put any kind of head you wanted on it and kind of say it's something else than it actually is?
I mean, sure you could. They said they were cyclopses when they saw.
Well, I guess that's my point. Is like that we already saw a thing in that when I was showing those diagrams of things without heads or without skin. Luke went bye. Well, if Luke doesn't come back, which hopefully he can just come right back.
Hey, see if you can quit your screen right now.
My screen is. It's funny. My screen is not up. Maybe I'll try to share it now.
Share it and then quit it.
And I'll wait.
I just exited and came back because that might have been a me issue, but
it worked.
Is my screen
the problem?
Is my screen still up?
Yeah, your screen's still up, bro.
Oh my gosh! Let me see if I can. I think if I can try.
Don't share your screen, Luke. Okay,
no,
you share your screen. We'll just let JT be the screen sharer.
What? No, I know. Now I'm going to stop that.
Sweet.
Oh, did I stop it? Did it work?
Nope.
You might need JT. I left and came back, and that fixed it. So you might need to leave and come back.
Okay.
I think if I come back,
sorry, everyone.
If I leave, is it going to kill the whole live?
It probably will.
You think so?
Yeah, because he's the controller of it.
Don't leave. We'll just
Don't
have an
leave.
infinite
Yeah.
regress.
We'll just
I can share my screen again.
No, don't do your screen. JT, share the
Oh,
screen.
Riverside.
What a mess. We got screens to infinity now.
Well,
That was a mistake. Well, we should probably, you know what? Let's just kind of like wrap it up on this point. Okay, so well, actually, I teased this and I want to get to it real quick. Luke, tell us about fossil fuels. As obviously, I think that this does kind of tie some things together.
I wish we didn't have the infinite regress. I won't look at it. So fossil fuels, real quickly. I think that you asked about Nephilim earlier and dinosaurs. I think there's a possibility that there was some shenanigans going on and that some of the dinosaurs were Nephilim. So that's an interesting idea. But I'm not dogmatic about it. As far as the fossil fuel thing, so fossil fuel is a natural process that the Earth goes through. It happens abiotically. Science has probably always known this. They knew it in the history. It's called bitumen in the Bible. Noah's Ark is covered in it. The Tower of Babel, they didn't use mortar. They used bitumen because Josephus said that Nimrod was building it in such a way that if God decided to try to flood the world again, he would outsmart them with his waterproof tower. Anyways, bitumen was everywhere. Interesting. Petra oil. It's rock oil. If you go back to the original definitions of this thing, it just was everywhere. People knew it's like there was places where you knew you could go get it or whatever. Well, the problem is, the scarcity creates value, right? So if this
Absolutely.
is as prevalent as water, then you can't, they're finding a way to charge for water as well, but it's less likely to charge for it. So you had Rockefeller, that con artist nightmare. He paid his scientists to go to the Geneva Convention, I think is what it was, and basically pitched the idea that this was a rare phenomenon and that therefore he could charge more. And the story that he came up with is that it was created as the dinosaurs that we definitely know died 70 million years ago, turned into this fuel over time. So they turn into a fossil or a fuel or fossil fuel, whatever they need. They make the dinosaur, the Sinclair logo. They tell all the children, oh, look at the dinosaur. Your car's fueled by dinosaurs. And everybody's like, oh, dinosaurs, long time ago. It takes a long time to do this. Defends their secular model, attacks the Bible, and allows them to charge 100x for his oil monopoly. Brilliantly done. I mean, either Rockefeller was brilliant or the devil who was pulling the strings is brilliant. But the evidence for abiotic petroleum creation, just that the Earth is refilling this, is ample. There's actually been Russian scientists who got into trouble by basically saying, the Earth just creates this. There's all of these wells that they have found, or these reserves that they have found, that they've pulled all of the oil out. And they're like, oh, that's done. And they come back 10 years later and it's entirely filled back up again. So it seems to be, some sort of the Earth just spawns this fuel that God knew that we needed for heat or whatever. I'm a simulation guy. It's like, you need this fuel source. Here, you get oil. And they were like, nope, they have dinosaurs and it's scarce, and we're going to charge you an arm and a leg, and we're going to disprove the Bible and the whole thing. Absolute racket.
Yeah, two birds, one stone.
The oil, it's very interesting that oil, we dig it out of a place, we dig it out of sandy loam and stuff in certain places. They actually pull it out of a place called, a material called shale.
Yeah, isn't that interesting with like the Sheol?
Sheol is the place of hell, but oil comes from Sheol. Like,
isn't that
literally.
interesting?
Wow,
and that was just a funny connection there when you realize, so what is Sheol oil? I wonder if it's the bodies of everybody that went to hell. It's just discreting out of the earth or something. Maybe that's why they actually.
Well, that's kind of almost that. Well, that's very similar to the way that Rockefeller is trying to say that. Yeah, it's literally.
There's a lot of people going to hell, though. So I don't think they're going to run out.
Dead dinosaurs. But yeah, so anyways,
Sinclair fueled on people burning in hell.
Infinite
Don't worry, there's no shortage of them. Yeah, I shouldn't laugh about that. Sorry, guys. Sorry, guys. Yeah. But final thoughts, Bryan. So it sounds like to me that. It seems like we made some ground. dinosaurs are not real. They're dragons. Can we all finally agree that they're either giants or dragons?
I actually totally agree with that statement. I think dinosaurs are dragons. Yes,
I agree too. Yeah.
Oh my gosh, I feel like that I feel like obviously this was, I didn't expect it to come together this well at the end.
Really?
But no, I mean, I do feel like that. Regardless, regardless, it's like kind of like that. I like what Luke and what both Luke and Bryan have done, because even with the information that's presented from the scientists, we can still say, well, that's what you got.
Hogwash.
Okay, this still fits in with our biblical paradigm, because obviously we can really poke holes in your weak points of your science about like the fact that, dinosaurs just happen to live by lakes, and therefore they were quickly buried by mud, because lakes obviously produce mud like crazy, versus the idea that is it very possible biblically that, again, if there was giants before and after the flood, whether it was men and also beasts, that there was this different climate, where I think a lot of people have, Bryan and I did a show about possibly the giant trees. Was there megaflora and megafauna before the flood? I think it seems likely there was a different climate. The flood changed everything. And again, we've been continuing to dig, that's probably mostly what we dig up, is stuff that's remnants of the days of Noah, which obviously I feel like all bets are off as far as like really what lived. I mean, I'm obviously open to anything that was any kind of crazy beast that you could possibly see in those days. So yeah, anyways, with that being said, Bryan, you have any final thoughts?
I had a final thought, pass to Luke, and then I'll give my final thought because I forgot it.
So I had other bits of presentation that was going to be all of the mythos of St. George and, the guy that was Vlad the Great's dad, who was also a dinosaur hunter. This story of the wicked, human-eating, terrible dragon that the chivalrous knight went and defeated and got the woman and the gold and stuff. This is an ancient story that's told through so many different civilizations that it's likely based on actual events. Most myths have a nugget of truth, and either were grandized by propaganda or just over time with a telephone game, because entropy increases always. So however this happens, it's rooted in truth, or it is entirely true, or it's nuanced. This is the thing about this, is it's hard to just say it's not this, it is this, because I think the truth kind of is nuanced and in the middle. But I think that what is known as the dragon myth is what science is calling dinosaurs. So I think we can come to common ground there. And I think that could you imagine if we were taught in school, or if it came out, that these mountains were formed by the flood? Those jagged rocky mountains were formed violently by the flood. The reason there's dinosaurs in the whales in the middle of the desert is because of the flood. The reason you find these clams in the plains is because of the flood. Giants were real. You could go see them. And the Smithsonian there's an active cover up of the Smithsonian. I actually have a clip I was going to show you, but I had to close the tab, of somebody in a Colorado newspaper saying, we found these giants and the Smithsonian's coming to take them all away.
There's only a million articles about that.
There's a million articles about that. So if we lived in a world where everywhere you looked, every valley and all of these things were formed by the flood, and you saw that God judged the world, imagine how that would feel. If we lived in a world where you could go to the museum and see the giants to understand that David and Goliath and Og, Goliath was a giant. The Anakim were giants. Imagine, that if we lived in a world where they said, yeah, the dragons were the dinosaurs that humans, actually, what caused it to be extinct, it was us versus them and we won. The world would look a lot like what the Bible said, and people would understand that the Bible is an accurate document. But again, science has, intentionally, obviously we believe the devil is behind this. What did the devil say to Adam and Eve, or to Eve? Did God really say, right? Getting people to question God's word is fundamental to disobeying God.
Very beginning.
So the evidence of the Bible is everywhere. And if we were just told the truth about it, we would be living in it in real time. And it's taken a very convincing, coercive, manipulative, gaslighting, controlling the information thing to convince the youth that it didn't happen that way. And it's really frustrating. And when you peel back the curtain, which we've all done, and I've done it over the last 3 years, my confidence interval in the validity of the Bible is at an all-time high. You would think that me researching this for 3 years, fighting the preeminent atheists and TikTok and, being constantly attacked, you think I would be like, oh, maybe it would eroding me. I'm galvanized that this is the actual historical account of the creator of the universe. What an honor to be in it. It's too bad that they stole this from the children, but they will be judged. And in the meantime, God's chosen individuals like us, crazy minds, to try to sound the alarm and say that, the Bible's trustworthy and they've been lying to us. Like my shirt says "They Lie." It's one of the shirts for my merchandise. It's a play off of the "They Live" thing. It's "They lie" about the theory of evolution.
I like that.
Your shirt is "Research the Smithsonian." I love it. And this is it's a grassroots operation. And, God bless you and your ministry, JT, and everybody, keep asking questions, except for the Bible. That's the only truth that we have. Everything else is up for debate. So, question everything except for the Bible.
Amen, brother. So closing thoughts, Bryan?
I forgot what I was going to say, honestly, but all I want to say is, hey, I love it. I love this topic. Research it yourself, guys. There's so much more hidden things that they're not telling us, and there's more topics that we could have gone into, guys. Maybe we'll do a part 2 or something, because there's all the other topics about talking about fossils, how fossils. We didn't even get into the part where we talked about how fossils form actually, and that the fact that fossils form from a specific type of sediment that had to have happened, not just regular mud doesn't form them either. It has to have limey mud. And actually I went down and I actually went to Dinosaur Valley, and I was on a dig site checking some stuff out. And I don't know if you know this, but in Dinosaur Valley, there are dinosaur footprints in the mud, which is phenomenal, because that means the dinosaurs walked across the land, left footprints.
Do they have 3 things? Is like a chicken?
Yeah, 3 toes. They look like a chicken, giant chicken toes. Yeah, and you're just like, dude, and they're massive looking feet. And there's some Brachiosaurus footprints that look like a big circle.
But isn't there also giant human footprints in the?
That's what I was going to tell you. Yes. And so when I was there digging up these stuff and looking at these things, it was the lowest the river had gone in 10 years. Okay. So I went down to Dinosaur Valley in Texas, and the riverbed was so low that they were able to dig up some older, footprints that normally aren't visible. They're only visible once every 10 years or so, or something like that. And so I got to see some pretty astoundingly clear as day, dinosaur tracks. And that means that the dinosaur tracks had to have happened in a very special type of mud, not normal mud. It was a limey mud, because it was limestone. So it was a limey sediment mud. And so the constant theory in that moment, when you to see footprints fossilize and then be hardened, this is what I've learned from the paleontologists that I work with. There is a layer of limey mud over the entire earth right now, everywhere. It's different layers in different spots. Some spots, the limey mud's really deep, and sometimes it's really shallow. In this area in Texas, for whatever reason, the limey mud is very shallow to the surface. And so they were able to just dig it up really easily. And you can see impressions and footprints. We can see clams, whole clams, that when clams die, they open up. They die and they open up. And you see them on the beach. You see those clams opened up, right? And other things eat the insides, and it's all dead. Okay. When the clams that we saw in the limestone were shut, they were shut still with their tongues, some of them sticking out even, which means they were fossilized. They were dipped in concrete. They were dipped in some kind of limey mud instantly concreted. They were put in a mold, basically. And so you could see these clamshells. There was some mega tragic event, which it does say in the Bible that the fountains of the deep opened up. Right, so the fountains opened up,
and then obviously the windows of heaven.
Yep. And so here's a really interesting theory that you guys should check into. There's a difference between asteroids, meteors, and comets. Okay, I don't know if everybody knows this. There's 3 different things. So meteors.
Hey, Bryan, hey, I gotta wrap it up here.
Okay, I'm wrapping it up real fast. So real fast. Trust me. So meteors are made of water. Okay, and comets are made of water, and water and dirt and stuff. But that's what they believe. The fountains of the deep opened up, and it shot the water of the earth shot out and made comets, and that's why they come back to the earth, because they're in a cycle flowing. But when they shot out all this slimy limestone that went and covered the earth, and that's why there's dinosaur foot tracks in the slimy bedstone, and you can also see giant human foot tracks. But when I went there, they cut them all out. So all the a lot of the footsteps are cut out. It's really interesting.
I thought we made so much ground when we agreed they were dragons. And
he misspoke. He meant dragons.
Stop
JT,
calling them.
Do you mind? I hate to do this, but I am going to let. I'm not going to drag it on any further. But if I'm trying to build the YouTube channel, obviously. So if you guys are interested in my version, I understand why if you don't agree with me on some of these things, but consider giving me a follow on the YouTube channel.
Oh yeah, I was just about to promote. Hey,
well, thank you.
I just actually, while we were talking before, I put all Luke's links in the descriptions.
Thank you.
Luke, you can find Luke on TikTok, on Facebook, Instagram. I believe all those things. I got your website on there.
Thank you.
And yeah, obviously, if you guys want to see more live streams, I think that. This is obviously my most fun, having discussions with my friends, and we can talk about these things in real time. If you guys want to see more of this, obviously encourage Luke to do more stuff on here, because I'm trying to get him off TikTok. I want him to be more of a full-time
off the
YouTuber.
hard stuff.
Yeah, right. You got stay off that crack over there on TikTok. I know it's fun sometimes, but let's go over here on YouTube. And so obviously, giving Lucas, subscribing to his channel, obviously will help him be more encouraged to do more stuff on here. So anyways, Luke, I really appreciate having you on. Obviously, I always enjoy talking to you. Bryan, all our links in the description too. And what's interesting as I continue to wrap this up, what's interesting, as Luke said, mythology, there's always hints of truth in it. And so the mythologies that run around the world is giants, dragons, a big flood.
Mm-hmm.
It's basically the kind of the story. It's kind of the story of like the Ancient Angels movie Bryan and I did as a nice not so subtle plug. Yes, like that kind of stuff. The mythologies came from places of truth, and I think that's part of like that. We all bring a different piece of this old puzzle together, and I think that obviously guys like Luke and Bryan, obviously with my skepticism, I think help us get a clear picture of what was actually true. So. Anyways, I appreciate you guys greatly for sticking in with us. Again, Luke's links are in the description, Bryan's links as well. I love you guys. God bless you.
Thank you, JT. Love you, man. And Bryan, nice to meet you. Great work, man. Thanks, guys.
Yep.
Thank you, everybody, for watching.
Awesome.